Chapter 576. After leaving the kindergarten, Yang Yi returned to the coffee shop, parked his car, and went to the building of the School of Classical Music alone. The School of Classical Music was not far from the back door. It only took a few minutes to walk from the coffee shop. The building where the School of Classical Music was located covered a large area. Like the Chinese character Hui, the 4 floors surrounded a large garden-style patio in the middle. Because the patio area was large, the lighting was not as bad as other buildings of the same type. On the contrary, the well-taken care of green plants made people feel relaxed and happy inside. School had not started yet, but there were still sounds of music coming from the School of Classical Music. There were all kinds of musical instruments, including piano, violin, cello, and so on. Yang Yi could also hear people practicing flute, saxophone, and even the less popular harp and cymbal sounds. Not having the time to pursue these sounds, Yang Yi went to the 3rd floor and knocked on the door of the office of the deputy dean, Pang Buodong. Pang Buodong was a short, balding man in his 50s. He recognized Yang Yi at a glance. After all, Yang Yi had often occupied the headlines of major media outlets in the past year. He was also inextricably linked to Jiang Chuan. It was hard not to recognize Yang Yi's face. Pang Buodong did not know if it was because of Yang Yi's identity, or because of his relationship with the old man, Hu Songnan, but he was still very warm to Yang Yi. "Professor Hu said that you would come to our school to listen. I didn't dare to believe it. You are a big star, and you have composed a lot of songs. Why would you want to go back to university to study again?" Pang Buodong asked with a smile after chatting with Yang Yi. Pop music composition is not particularly profound knowledge. After a period of composing, I also realized that my own accumulation of knowledge is not enough. I need to learn more systematic knowledge of composition. Yang Yi explained humbly to Pang Buodong. Of course, Yang Yi did not tell him the real reason. But what he said was not a lie. There was indeed a reason in this regard. After a while, Pang Buodong stood up and said with a smile, "I believe that you don't need us to teach you the basics of music theory and solfeggio training. You can talk to the professor about harmony, polyphony, orchestration, music form, and so on. You can see which classes you need to listen to and which grades progress. I've already contacted a few professors. Let's go. I'll introduce you to them." Pang Buodong walked out with Yang Yi and headed in the direction of the composition department. On the way, a few students passed by and greeted Pang Buodong. They also saw Yang Yi. At first, these students didn't think much of it. When they reacted and turned around, they only saw Pang Buodong leading Yang Yi into an office. "Isn't that Yang Yi? What is he doing here?" The students looked at each other, but their curiosity was already bursting. At noon at Springfield Kindergarten, Lu Weisha's situation did not change much. She still found it difficult to communicate with the other students, and even with the teachers. It was not that the teachers did not speak English well. Springfield Kindergarten had very high standards for English teaching, and this requirement was not only a certificate, but also the standard of oral English. Teacher Mu, Teacher Shen, and Teacher Kai could all communicate with foreigners fluently in English. But what was the use? Teacher Mu and the others spoke quickly, and Lu Weisha did not understand. When the words were complicated, she did not understand either. On the contrary, Lu Weisha stumbled and spoke while gesturing. She was able to chat with Shishi and the others. This was especially true for Shishi. Under the stimulation of her friends, she dug up the foundation of English that she had forgotten for more than a year. Although she was not fluent in English, her pronunciation was not standard, and she did not know many words. She was about the same as Lu Weisha. When she could occasionally understand a sentence from the other party, she was so happy that she danced with joy. Therefore, when it was time for lunch, Lu Weisha also treated Shishi and her other friends as her lifesavers and followed them closely. On the first day of school, the kindergarten cafeteria was still in a mess. The new students in the lower class still didn't know the rules, and the other older students weren't any better. Perhaps after a summer of playing outside, they had forgotten how to behave in kindergarten. A large group of children hugged their lunch boxes and ran around, chattering like tens of thousands of ducks, almost turning the whole world upside down. STA_I_KO. Lu Weisha had been to a kindergarten in Sweden. In Swedish kindergartens, even the children who couldn't even walk steadily would be obedient. They would hold their plates in an orderly manner and line up to get their food. After they finished eating, they would even obediently put their plates in the recycling area. Hence, she couldn't help but mutter. This was also the most common sentence that Swedes taught their children from a young age. Line up properly. Note 1. But no one could understand it. Lu Weisha, what did you say? She asked enthusiastically. She's saying something weird again. Chun Shuryan made a funny face and chuckled at Lan Xian. Lu Weisha could more or less understand the meaning of say something. She tried to explain to Shishi in English. Get the line. She was still gesturing with her hands. However, Shishi could not understand the meaning of this sentence in English. A line was a line, but what did it mean when it was combined? Moreover, Lu Weisha was not right. The two of them looked at each other in confusion for a while. Shishi simply followed her own thoughts. She thought that Lu Weisha was afraid. Don't be afraid, Lu Weisha. We can help you. And you can eat with us. The little girl kindly patted her 2 cartoon lunchboxes and said, I will also help you, Lu Weisha. I also brought delicious food. Young Luochi was not so repulsed by Lu Weisha now. She also said along with Shishi, I can exchange with you. You give me your delicious food, give me some. Then I will follow you and give you some of mine. Lan Xian also said, but the little fat girl was obsessed with food. She looked at Lu Weisha's lunchbox and drooled. This is called sharing. Nan Zhaoyu felt that if he did not speak, he would not have a sense of existence. Hee sharing. The few children were happy. They did not know why they were laughing, but this smile also infected Lu Weisha, and she also smiled. However, when the teachers arranged a seat for them, everyone sat down and watched the other children skillfully take out a sumptuous meal from their lunch boxes. Lu Weisha was stunned. She hesitated for a moment, and then opened the lunchbox and took out a sandwich. A few pieces of vegetables, ham, and eggs. This kind of sandwich was actually quite delicious. But at noon, compared to other people's food, the gap between the rich and poor suddenly became obvious. Inexplicably, Lu Weisha felt like the wind blowing the fallen leaves in her heart. Don't think that the Swedes eat this kind of thing every day. The Swedes are still a little particular about food. They liked cold meals such as cold smoked or warm smoked salmon, pickled salmon, cold smoked pork leg, and all kinds of sausages. These were all common dishes on their table, and the cheese, toast, and all kinds of berry dessert pies were needless to say. But who asked Lu Weisha to prepare lunch for her father, David? It was just a sandwich. It was soft and cold, and it was hard to eat. Fortunately, Shishi was used to bringing an extra lunchbox for her children. She turned her head and saw Lu Weisha holding a sandwich. Do you want it? Shishi pushed her box of sumptuous and beautiful dishes towards Lu Weisha. And she even changed to English and said again, You want to eat? Not to mention the other dishes, Lu Weisha looked at the lychee meat, tomato, and cauliflower. Just by looking at the thick juices and the red tomato color, she knew that it was sweet and sour. It was very tempting. Lu Weisha could not help but swallow her saliva and asked softly, Can I? Yes, we have to share. Shishi said with a smile. The girl's curved eyes were like the moon in the night sky, as clear as water, as if reflecting people's hearts. Lu Weisha did not understand Shishi's words, but she understood what she meant. Lu Weisha felt warm in her heart, and she said sincerely to Shishi, Tak. Thank you. Chapter 577. You helped a classmate who didn't have lunch. That's a very kind thing to do. Mom is very proud of you. In the evening, when Shishi came back, the little girl told her parents the story of the first day of kindergarten. Obviously, the most interesting story was the story between her and the new transfer student, Lu Weisha. When Murphy praised Shishi's heroic act of sharing her food, the little girl was too excited to be happy. There was more to come. Lu Weisha, she didn't eat a lot, only a little. Because Xian and Shuryan also wanted to eat. Xian even cried. The little girl's narration was a little messy. After saying a lot, Yang Yi and Murphy finally understood. It turned out that because Shishi wanted to share her food with Lu Weisha, the two little foodies, Lan Xian and Chen Shiyun were a little unwilling. Especially Lan Xian, when she saw Lu Weisha use the fork on her lunchbox to clumsily dig into the food. She spontaneously felt that the duck in her mouth had flown away. That sadness was suffocating. And then Lan Xian began to cry. The two children, Yang Luoqi and Nan Zhaoyu, stared blankly at the side. Chen Shiyun was even more unhappy and held her chopsticks in her mouth. Perhaps because Lu Weisha was a foreigner, it was difficult to communicate with her, so she didn't shout out. However, her emotions were on the verge of exploding. However, Lu Weisha didn't gobble down the food in front of her just because she thought it was delicious. She was really like a little lady. She dug a little bit of each food and then pushed the lunchbox back, saying words of gratitude. Lu Weisha didn't get a lot of food, estimated to be 2 or 3 mouthfuls for an adult, but Shishi's lunchbox was very big, and it seemed that the food inside hadn't been touched much. I told Lu Weisha that you should eat more. My papa's dishes are delicious, Shishi said to her parents. But she didn't eat. There was still a lot of food left, so the other children did not have any objections. Lan Xian, who was tearing up, saw it and wiped her tears away. She hurriedly reached out with her chopsticks to pick up the food. If she was too slow, Chen Shiyun would finish all the food. That's because Lu Weisha knows how much she can eat. So after taking what she can eat, she won't take more to avoid wasting food. Yang Yi felt that this was a good opportunity, so he smiled and said to the happy Shishi, "You have to learn from Lu Weisha's strengths, such as her frugality. Will she finish all the food in her lunchbox? You didn't waste food?" The little girl tilted her head and thought for a moment before nodding her head in realization. She still remembered that in addition to eating the food, Lu Weisha still finished the tasteless sandwich in small bites. In contrast, Lan Xian and Chen Shiyun didn't have the habit of being modest or frugal, especially Lan Xian. When she came to Shishi's house to eat and drink, she would eat her favorite dishes and leave more than half a bowl of rice in her bowl. Although this was a child's nature, Yang Yi didn't want his daughter to develop the habit of wasting food. Well, Shishi understands. She will grow up slowly. Murphy kissed her daughter's little face lovingly and said, "Tell Mom you Lu Weisha, and the other children can't speak English. How can you communicate with them?" When it was time to go to bed at night, Shishi was very sleepy, but she was still very excited. After Yang Yi finished telling her a story, he was ready to turn off the light and let her go to bed. "Papa, can you teach me more of Lu Weisha's words?" The little girl seemed to be sleep-talking. She raised her eyelids and whispered, "I don't understand what Lu Weisha is talking about." "You want to learn Swedish?" Yang Yi was a little surprised. "Or English?" "I don't know." The little girl might just be on a whim, but she really wasn't satisfied with the way she communicated with her new friends. She was looking forward to a better way of communication. "Well, Dad will teach you a few words tomorrow. It's too late today, go to bed early." Yang Yi gently touched his daughter's soft long hair and said softly, "Good night, Papa." She closed her eyes with satisfaction. Yang Yi smiled, lowered his head, and kissed Shishi's little face. "Good night, my baby." Murphy's belly was getting bigger and bigger, and she was more sleepy, so she and Shishi were both sleeping. Yang Yi's work and rest schedule was more fixed, so he didn't feel sleepy so early, so he wandered to the study. "It seems that I have to buy some Swedish textbooks to learn." Yang Yi looked at his oversized bookshelf that was not half full, touched his chin, and secretly muttered. His daughter was so diligent and eager to learn. He couldn't let his daughter surpass him because of slacking off. He indeed only knew a little Swedish, but the foundation was good, so he believed that there wouldn't be too much of a problem for him to learn it by himself. He had to learn it by himself before he could teach his daughter. Microbroadcasting's influence was increasing day by day, especially because it provided a new platform for the public to express their own voices. The netizens' enthusiasm to participate in social affairs, entertainment gossip, and even some political issues became more and more intense. But its real power hadn't been completely unearthed by people yet. After brewing for a few days, the microbroadcasting of Zhuozai 888 finally blew up a big issue. Lin Mu, and withdrew from Singing Youth, and also exposed that Rong Huada's management company manipulated the results of the competition behind the scenes, and took advantage of the ignorance of the student group to set a contract trap to steal Thousand Miles Chuanshu's song. This series of events had been followed by reporters before this. However, the strength was not enough, and the public's attention to this kind of incident was not enough. Because Lin Muan withdrew from the competition, his image was deliberately exaggerated by some people, and it was already extremely bad, so the credibility of his revelations was greatly reduced. After that, the champion of Singing Youth was announced, and the winner was Enlay, who was signed under Mingsu Records. Although no one believed that Enlay, who was not as good as Lin Mu, and was qualified to win the championship, this also shattered Lin Mu and's accusation of Ronghuada's management company manipulating the competition. As for Thousand Miles Chuanshu, this group's reputation was too small, not to mention the whole country, even in Jiangqing City. Only Jiangchuan students called for an investigation on micro-broadcasting, but this influence was far from enough to topple Ronghuada. Ronghuada explained this matter to the reporters who asked questions about the contract dispute. After a period of public relations, the negative impact seemed to continue to weaken, and they were about to be suppressed by them. But at this time, Zhuozai Luyu dug up some of the clumsy deeds done by Ronghuada and Tang Kaitai under his own micro-broadcasting. Although it was only some evidence that Huiyang had asked people to investigate openly and secretly, Luyu, according to the guidance of the mysterious man, fabricated some sensational plots. For example, at the beginning of micro-broadcasting, people angrily saw this description. "My father is Tang Rong. Child star Tang Kaitai drove outside the school 2 years ago and injured a student. He wanted to escape, but when he was stopped, he not only didn't wake up, but also arrogantly shouted to passers-by, thinking that the police dared not arrest him. This car accident did exist. It was included in the evidence that Huiyang had investigated, but it was not used in court. Because this car accident did not cause any deaths, but only a student's leg was broken. The Tang family spent money to keep the peace, and also used their connections to prevent the police who investigated at that time from leaking to the media. Therefore, this could only be regarded as an undisclosed scandal of Tang Kaitai. But in the story, the injury was blurred. Whether the injured person was alive or dead, the statement was vague. Let's just assume that he was dead. But how could the person who hit someone be so arrogant? As for whether Tang Kaitai was so arrogant, who knew? Anyway, this guy really liked to talk about his father all the time. The netizens in this world also did not lack a sense of justice. They also hated some people who bullied others with their power, and they were also willing to speak up for the weak. With such a sensational plot in front of them, the angry netizens would naturally continue to watch it. Many of the things that Tang Kaitai did with his father's identity as the director of the Xiangnan Television Bureau, such as snatching other celebrities' resources, framing artists he did not like, and even cheating and suppressing Qianli Chuanshu who did not cooperate, seemed to be amplified by anger, and became evidence of Tang Kaitai's crimes. Under the manipulation of people with ulterior motives, almost overnight, the gossip article of "My Father is Tang Rong" was reposted by various internet celebrities. Tang Kaitai, who was a child star and was not particularly famous, finally became the focus of the entire country. "My father is Tang Rong." Behind this sentence, a scene would appear in anyone's mind. Under the protection of an insatiable official, his son was complacently doing wrong things, and even spitting saliva to point out the country. How can we let such an official continue to control our world? How could such a second-generation official be allowed to continue being arrogant and despotic? The next person who might be hit is yourself. Tang Kaitai did not know about this. Before he woke up, his father came to find him and slapped him a few times. Tang Rong asked him to look at the rumors on the internet, and then asked him angrily, "Did you say such things at that time? Is there something wrong with your brain?" "I don't know, I don't remember." Tang Kaitai was still confused. His brain was like a mass of paste, and he could not remember at all. "Didn't I tell you not to use my name to show off? Look what you're doing now. Look at what you've done." Tang Rong hammered the table. However, now regardless of whether Tang Kaitai said this or not, he still had to do public relations to eliminate the impact. In addition to Ronghuada's public statement, vowing that it was false, Tang Kaitai also used microbroadcasting to find Lu Yu, hoping that he could retract his article. The problem of money was negotiable. Of course, there was also coercion and some intimidation of cross-provincial pursuit. However, Lu Yu turned his head and sent a screenshot of their conversation. Unfortunately, Tang Kaitai still used his own micro-broadcasting to find Lu Yu. Lu Yu not only made himself a hero who was not afraid of power, but also showed Tang Kaitai's arrogance. The netizens who followed this matter became more and more angry. However, the government had not yet paid due attention to micro-broadcasting's public opinion. Although the internet was going crazy, there was still no third-party or official response. The netizens on the internet felt even more angry and sad about this situation, and their scolding of Tang Kaitai became louder and louder. They did not believe Rong Huada's public relations at all. A few days later, finally, the State Television Administration was alarmed. They opened an official micro-broadcasting and announced to the public, disciplinary officers have been sent to strictly examine Tang Rong. Yang Yi was too lazy to complain about the media's ability to do whatever they wanted. He didn't clarify either. While everyone was collectively scolding him for biting off more than he could chew, Yang Yi posted a micro-broadcasting post and uploaded a photo. He showed off the lunch that he had meticulously prepared for Shishi. Shishi said that her new foreign classmates like her dad's cooking very much, so she had to pack more food for them today. With one more person, she can't let the little ones not have enough to eat. In particular, the third photo is a big surprise. I prepared a dish from her hometown for Shishi's foreign classmates, Swedish meatballs. Micro-broadcasting, Shishi's family chef, also occasionally taught netizens how to cook. It's a very famous dish. The secret is to mix an appropriate amount of starch and egg white into the minced meat to make the meatballs firm. It's similar to the famous Chinese dish meatballs. However, the cooking method is different. It's fried in oil. When it's out of the pot, it's brown in color, rich in flavor and tender and delicious. If it's eaten with mashed potatoes, it's simply an incomparable enjoyment. It's a pity that mashed potatoes don't taste good when they're cold, so I didn't make it. I hope the children will like today's dish. Not to mention looking at the photo, just looking at Yang Yi's description made the netizens hungry. Regardless of the villains who came to make trouble, many Yang Yi's fans left comments on micro-broadcasting. Boss Yang is really a chef. He can even cook Swedish delicacies. I'm hungry just looking at it. Boss, can you not tempt me? Boo-hoo, I'm still on a diet. This is a chef who has been delayed by writing novels. No, this is a master chef who has strayed into the path of singing. No, Boss Yang Yi, when is your new book coming out? Don't just focus on cooking. How many months have you delayed the release of your new book? It had to be said that Yang Yi's fans were more than his fans. The comment section was occupied by many fans who urged him to release the book. The next day, Yang Yi responded to the fans' questions. On October 10th, the new book will be officially released. At the same time, there will be a big announcement. A very simple micro-broadcasting teased the nerves of all the fans. October 10th? That's not far away. And what's the big announcement? The fans were excited and looked forward to it. Leaving the netizens aside, Yang Yi used the Swedish textbook as a prop and really acted like a professor. However, this professor was a little shabby because he was wearing a singlet, shorts, and flip-flops. The only students he was facing were a little girl with big eyes and a pregnant woman who wanted to join in the fun. Oh right, if you include Steamed Bun, who was sitting beside Shishi, Yang Yi had 4 students. For no problem, Steamed Bun was no longer a little puppy. He was in a rapid growth period and looked a little like a big dog. Of course, his face was still tender, and his thoughts were still very childish. Under the careful care of Yang Yi's family, Steamed Bun was not like a normal village dog with a dirty head and face. On the contrary, his fur was very clean. His yellow fur was a little short and glossy, not much worse than a golden retriever. Moreover, that pair of quick-witted eyes were like 2 black gems, appearing extraordinarily intelligent. Her_mar_. Yang Yi did not start with the complicated grammar, and did not even write it down. Instead, he directly taught Shishi the pronunciation of some common words like before. This sentence means how are you? Come read it after me. Her_mar_do? It had to be said that a child's ability to understand language was faster than an adult's. Shishi blinked her big eyes and listened to her father read it twice. She could roughly pronounce it. Hey Madu. After he finished, Shishi turned to look at her mother. Murphy, who had nothing to do, also followed with interest. Madu. Out of the 4 students, only 2 responded to the teacher's teaching. However, Yangyi did not mind. He nodded and commented, Shishi's pronunciation is quite close. Very good. After receiving the praise, Shishi was so happy that her eyebrows curved. She just sat on the sofa and twisted around. As she moved, Steamed Bun stretched out a front foot and placed it on Shishi's leg. It was unclear whether he wanted to remind Shishi not to move around, or if he wanted Shishi to play with him. Shishi hugged Steamed Bun, but she did not have time to play with him. What about me? Am I right? Madu. Murphy could not wait and asked Yangyi, who had stopped. Mom's pronunciation is not good. It's a lot off. Yangyi said impartially, come repeat it after me. Ho-ho uvulatory sound Madu. Humph, you clearly didn't let me hear you clearly. Murphy pouted and muttered a few times. However, this was just a little fun between her and Yangyi. Without interrupting Shishi's learning, Murphy continued to recite with Shishi. Shishi saw that she was about to start learning again. She quickly sat down and recited with her father seriously. Here, the tongue should be slightly upward like this. Of course, some pronunciation corrections were still necessary. The little girl followed her father's tongue and looked at him with a smile. If it did not involve the confusing grammar, learning language was quite interesting, especially those strange pronunciations. To the little girl, it was like a small game. Chapter 579. Teaching Shishi to speak Swedish wasn't as easy as it seemed. Even though Shishi was already considered smarter than her peers, she was still only 5 years old. Whether it was her ability to accept or her concentration, she still couldn't compare to an adult. That night, after 2 sessions, one after dinner and another after shower, Yangyi managed to teach Shishi 5 sentences. In fact, after learning some of the more complicated sentences, the pronunciation would be wrong, and she would need to repeat them a few more times. But no matter what, for a 5-year-old girl to be able to learn 5 sentences in a small language in one night, it was still commendable. The next day, Shishi went to kindergarten happily, and prepared to tell Lu Weisha the 5 sentences. However, the ending should be obvious. Lu Weisha responded happily, but Cici didn't understand, and the 2 of them had to stare at each other in confusion for a while. The response to Murphy's first fan meeting was very good. Yangyi brought Murphy to the studio to relax. Mo Shawan showed Murphy some of the letters and gifts sent by the previous batch of fans. Unlike Yangyi, Murphy was cold on the outside but warm on the inside. She was more concerned about her interactions with her fans and would occasionally write back to them. This was also why Murphy was often sent gifts by her fans even though she wasn't considered an idol. There was nothing special about the gift, but it was Jia Siyuan, who met his true love because of Mo Fei's album. At that time, when Mo Fei said goodbye to her, she said that it was a pity that she couldn't witness their wedding. After this fan went back, she sent Mo Fei a pack of wedding candies. This gift was much more meaningful than any other expensive gift. After these lucky fans returned, they posted some interesting things from the fan meeting, Murphy and Yangyi's singing, and some photos on micro-broadcasting. Phoebe Studios' official Weibo reposted all of these. These micro-broadcasting records made many fans who didn't get selected go crazy with envy. Not to mention the invitations that were like gifts, being able to interact with Murphy at the scene and experience Murphy's usual friendly personality for the first time, as well as singing live without plugging in. These benefits definitely made other fans jealous. The fans are calling for you to continue holding fan meetings. They say that no matter how far it is, even if you have to go to Lhasa, they are willing to go. Mo Shawan said to Murphy. She looked at Yangyi, but this still depends on your willingness and whether your body can take it. Murphy also looked at Yangyi. Right now, not only did her body belong to her, she was also carrying an almost 8-month-old baby. So, she didn't have any ideas about this problem. Yang Yi saw the desire in Murphy's eyes. He pondered for a moment and said, "A few days ago, I went for a prenatal checkup. The doctor said that everything is fine. Also, this isn't the first time Murphy is pregnant, so there aren't many problems with her body. If you want to hold the second phase, try to end it in the first half of the month. The rest of the time, she will need to rest and wait for delivery." Yang Yi wasn't so old-fashioned. He still believed in science. Moreover, if he held fan meetings, Murphy would basically sit in a chair and Yang Yi would accompany her, so there wouldn't be any problems. The benefits were obvious. An appropriate job could keep a pregnant woman optimistic and cheerful. Including swimming, an appropriate amount of exercise could also help Murphy maintain a good physical condition, which was more beneficial for her future delivery. "I know." Murphy's face lit up and she nodded happily. "Also, control the duration a little. Just sing 2 songs in each of the 2 sections. Don't be too tired." Yang Yi said this to Mo Xiaowan. Mo Xiaowan nodded and memorized it. Today, Yang Yi came to the studio not only to take Murphy out for a walk, but also to talk to Mo Xiaowan about some business. "Xiaowan, is it troublesome to open a production company?" Yang Yi asked. "Brother-in-law, you mean a film production company? Actually, our Huai brothers can also do it. You see, we can invest in micro-movies like Fairy Tale and The Fugitive. As long as you have money, the project will only look at your funds." Mo Xiaowan explained to Yang Yi. "I'm talking about an entertainment program production company, or a variety show production company." Yang Yi's words shocked Mo Xiaowan. Even Murphy looked at Yang Yi in astonishment. Producing a variety show? This was completely different from composing a song or investing in a movie. A variety show involved many aspects, especially complicated people. According to what I know, the variety shows of the major TV stations are separated from production and broadcasting. Many outstanding variety shows are produced by private companies. Yang Yi said. The separation of production and broadcasting also gave private companies a good opportunity. For example, Sister Luo Xian, who had a good relationship with Murphy, the copyright of her program, Jixin Interview, did not belong to Shanghai Satellite TV, but to the production company behind her. Luo Xian and Shanghai Satellite TV had a cooperative relationship. Shanghai Satellite TV provided her with the venue. Luo Xian and her team would complete the production, and Shanghai Satellite TV would be responsible for the broadcast. The profits would be calculated according to the contract. In other words, if Luo Xian was tired of Shanghai Satellite TV, she could wait for the contract to end and go to Beijing or other TV stations in other cities to continue filming Jixin Interview. Correspondingly, Guangdong Province TV station's Fast Music was a program that completely belonged to the TV station, so the TV station had the power to decide the life and death of the host. Brother-in-law, if you want to do a variety show, I suggest you buy a production company directly. Mo Xiaowan knew that Yang Yi did not lack money, so she said the most effective way. Because the production of the program is not simple, if you want to build your own team from scratch, you will need to hire a lot of people. You might not even be able to find the talent you want. For example, this company, China Star Production. Mo Xiaowan picked up an entertainment magazine on the table that she had flipped through because she was bored and passed it to Yang Yi. China Star Production was doing well, and had produced 2 popular variety shows. But their boss was involved in a money laundering scandal, and was arrested. Now the bank wants to auction China Star Production. If I provide an idea for a variety show, the program flow, and some features, will they be able to perfect it and produce it for me? Yang Yi asked. Of course, China Star's production team is very good. Now many production companies want to take away their company's program and production team through the auction. Mo Xiaowan said. How much do you think it will cost? If you buy this company? Yang Yi asked. 1 or 200 million. I'm not sure about this. Maybe because their program is more popular, it will be more expensive. But the most important thing is that China Star Production is going to be auctioned. Who knows how many people are eyeing it? Mo Xiaowan said. Brother-in-law, give me 2 days. I will let you know after I get someone to investigate. Yang Yi nodded. Actually, Yang Yi did not care about the programs produced by China Star. The main thing was that Yang Yi had to get the production team of this company. He could bid for the program first and then resell the program that he did not want to others. At the same time, on the other side of Jiangcheng, in the Jiangnan military camp, Guo Debao was carrying 2 big boxes and walking on the road. These 2 big boxes were local specialties that his mother had sent to him. They were candied fruits that were grown at home. They were not worth much, but they were delicious. His comrades loved to eat them. So Guo Debao's family would send him a batch every few months for him to eat with his comrades. Actually, the express delivery had arrived half a month ago. But at that time he was participating in the military competition in the grassland. So when he came back today, he packed up and hurried to the door to get it. Later, I will open it and let everyone have a taste. Then I will call home. Guo Debao thought. Suddenly, there was a clear shout behind him. Baldi Chong. Oh no, Guo Debao. It was not scary, but it was too sudden. Guo Debao almost threw the 2 boxes away and turned around to fight back. There were bottles and jars inside. If he threw them away, they would be gone. Chapter 580. The Media University of Jiang City was the best university in Tingshan, even in the whole Jiang City. Every year, the freshmen's military training was arranged in the Jiangnan military region. Yang Huan had been in the military training for a few days. Unlike the other girls in the class who cried for their parents and had to put on makeup, Yang Huan adapted well. She performed the best in the marching and field exercises, and was often praised by the instructor in her class. However, this also caused her to be ostracized. Other than a few good friends with similar personalities, many of the girls in the class were hostile towards her. It felt as if they were guarding against her snatching their boyfriends away from them. Yang Huan could choose to ignore them. However, in the dormitory, for some reason, her roommates knew that her brother was Yang Yi, who had written many hit songs. Their enthusiasm towards her made Yang Huan feel even more uncomfortable than the others' indifference. Therefore, after the afternoon training and lunch, Yang Huan went out for a stroll with a water bottle on the pretext that he needed to get some water. As Yang Huan walked on the road of the military camp, he recalled what had happened to him a year ago. About a year ago, he had come to the military camp with Guizi to watch someone else film. However, he had gotten lost and ended up in the territory of the Viper Special Forces. She even had a fight with that bad-tempered guy. She had to admit that the guy was good at fighting. Except for her 2 brothers and her father, he was the only one who could defeat her. Yang Huan used to be invincible in the village and in his high school. Of course, Yang Huan wouldn't get lost anymore. She knew the areas around her training like the back of her hand. As long as she didn't go too far, she wouldn't make the same mistake again. She couldn't wander around. That was against the military discipline. Yang Huan was talking about Guo Debao when she suddenly heard a achoo sound behind her. She turned around and saw a bald guy walking in the opposite direction with 2 big boxes in his arms. It was a familiar bald guy. He wasn't completely bald. Guo Debao still had some stubble on his head. However, he was used to fighting without hair, and there weren't so many rigid rules in the Viper Special Forces. The bald guy was too rare. The more Yang Huan looked at him, the more familiar he looked. Yang Huan recognized Guo Debao after a few glances. Therefore, with a mischievous smile, she tiptoed over and suddenly shouted, "Baldi Chong! Oh no, Guo Debao!" Baldi Valiant was a series of stories that Yang Yi had told to Shishi. Obviously, the characters were from his previous life, but Yang Yi had never read the story, so he made it up on his own. Yang Huan had also heard of this person from his elder brother. Subconsciously, he used Guo Debao to satisfy his dark psychology of can't I make fun of him even if I can't beat him? Guo Debao was really shocked by her. He turned his head with his eyes wide open and saw a young girl in the prime of her youth. She was like a willow on a dam in spring, smiling like a flower. Her melodious laughter echoed in Guo Debao's ears. Even the spring breeze couldn't compare to her. "Hey, what's wrong, Guo Debao? Don't you recognize me?" Seeing Guo Debao's dumbfounded expression, Yang Huan couldn't help but feel embarrassed. Could it be that he really couldn't remember who she was, and she had to greet him as if he was an acquaintance? That was awkward. Of course I recognize you. How can I not recognize you? You are Yang Yi's sister. Guadabeo wanted to scratch his head, but he realized that he couldn't free his hands because he was holding two big boxes. Just Yang Yi's sister? What did you say my name was? Yang Huan looked at Guadabeo suspiciously. She had a strong suspicion that this big baldy was really going to catch up with her brother after beating her up. Your name is Yang. Yang. Guadabeo was dumbfounded and stuttered, not knowing how to explain. Sure enough, you really don't remember my name. Humph, I only know that my elder brother is Yang Yi. Yang Huan pouted. However, seeing how embarrassed he was, Yang Huan didn't want to tease him anymore. All right, I'll tell you. My name is Yang Huan, Huan as in joy. Guadabeo quickly put down the box and reached out his hand as if he wanted to shake Yang Huan's hand. However, he didn't know if it was because he remembered that Yang Huan was a girl, or because he felt that his hand was a bit dirty, so he shyly withdrew his hand and rubbed it on his pants. Guadabeo wasn't good at communicating with girls. After all, there was no female creature in Viper. At most, he had seen a few in the military hospital, but they were all old doctors who had passed menopause. Facing Yang Huan, he didn't know what to say. Luckily, he had a prop with him. Guadabeo opened the cardboard box on the side and took out a big can of food. He handed it to Yang Huan and said, I'll treat you to some canned food. This is a local specialty from my hometown. It's all homemade, and the ingredients are absolutely healthy. By the way, what kind do you like? These are preserved peaches, made from peach flesh. I also have pears, apples, green plums. All right, that's enough. I'm going to drool if you keep talking. Yang Huan glanced at the big can of food in Guadabeo's hand, licked her lips and said helplessly, Guadabeo, thank you for your kindness. But I'm in military training right now. I can't put this in the dormitory. I'll be screwed if the instructor catches me. Yeah. Guadabeo scratched his bald head, not knowing what to say. However, he finally understood why Yang Huan was wearing a military uniform in the military camp. He had thought that Yang Huan had joined the military. The two of them looked at each other in silence for a while. Guadabeo said hesitantly, Do you want to try it now? He opened the bottle and handed it to Yang Huan without hesitation. Yang Huan was a bit hungry. The candied fruit looked very attractive to girls, and she had been eating meat every day in the canteen. She wanted to eat something to relieve her boredom. Delicious. Very sweet. Yang Huan took a bite and gave Guadabeo a thumbs up. Really? My mom made it. My comrades all said it's delicious. Guadabeo smiled. It was the first time Yang Huan saw Guadabeo smile like a bad guy. He was quite cheerful when he smiled. She couldn't help but take another bite and let Guadabeo close the lid. She said, Thanks, Guadabeo. You're treating me to something so delicious. You can go to my brother's place next time. You know where it is, right? It's the coffee shop behind Jiangchuan. I'll treat you to a meal. As the saying goes, courtesy demands reciprocity. Okay. Guadabeo thought for a while and said, When will your military training end? They won't be so strict when you leave. I'll leave you a can since you like it so much. Really? Our performance tomorrow will end the day after tomorrow. A car will pick us up in the evening. Can you give it to me when you're free? Yang Huan didn't stand on ceremony with Guadabeo. She smiled and asked, Yeah, we just came back from a competition. We don't need to go out for training this week except for basic training. Guadabeo nodded. You guys had a competition? What competition? Did you get first place? Yang Huan couldn't help but ask curiously. Well, Guadabeo was embarrassed again. He scratched his head and said embarrassedly, It's a competition in the military. I didn't get first place. The first place belongs to your brother's previous unit. They're better. It's okay. You're good too. Work hard and get first place next time. Yang Huan patted Guadabeo's shoulder and smiled. Guadabeo looked at the pretty Yang Huan in her military uniform and her bright smile. He couldn't help but feel a little absent-minded. It was as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. He nodded firmly. Okay, I'll talk to you later. I have to get water and go back to the dorm to rest. Otherwise, if the instructor catches me, you know. Yang Huan smiled and pointed at the two big boxes beside Guidabeo's feet. You should go back too. Can you carry these two boxes? She chuckled. Actually, I'm just concerned. I can't help you even if I want to. It's okay. I can do it. Guidabeo smiled, revealing his white teeth. Chapter 581. October 10th. It was a rare weekend. Mu Yuqing did not stay at home. Instead, he appeared in a big shopping mall near his house. Of course, Mu Yuqing did not like shopping. He was in the bookstore. Like the others, he was holding a copy of Yang Yi's new book and queuing up to pay for it. Yang Yi's identity was different now. Not only was he a best-selling author, but he was also a songwriter and a singer. Therefore, for his own benefit, the owner of the bookstore was more than happy to arrange a heavy promotion for Yang Yi's new book. The eBay at the door and the posters on the floor-to-ceiling display were all about the new book in Mu Yuqing's hands. Relieving grocery store. Not only do we sell groceries, but we also provide advice on troubles. Whether you are struggling, hesitating, or in despair and pain, we welcome you. After Journey by Night, Yang Yi's new non-children's novel is another one. It is not online literature, nor is it a mystery novel. However, it incorporates the essence of these genres. The story is brilliant, gripping, and subverting people's imaginations. This grocery store can help you find the lost things in modern people's hearts. Mu Yuqing could not help but want to flip open the book and read it carefully. However, he still had to pay for it first. Actually, Mu Yuqing had already participated in the pre-sale online. Just like before, the new book was delivered to him at noon by the Sahara Express Games. However, Mu Yuqing could not wait that morning. He went to the biggest bookstore near his house and bought a copy. Although the bookstore's price was a little more expensive, Mu Yuqing did not mind. He bought an extra copy as a small reward for Yang Yi, the cute author who treated him to a meal out of gratitude. While queuing, Mu Yuqing overheard a few customers who were also Yang Yi's fans chatting in front of him. I heard that Prison Break is going to be made into a TV series? I know. Didn't you see the news this morning? Sahara Press held a press conference to talk about our book and introduce Prison Break. They said that not only did they sell the copyright, but they are also preparing to select people to film it. Hey, is what the two of you said true? Who's going to film it? Prison Break is set in America, and it's such an exciting story. I don't want some small domestic film company to ruin it. Don't worry. I heard that they're not just selling the show to Wolf TV station. They're also getting a share of the viewership ratings. The director is Paul Tenier. Have you heard of him? He's a very famous TV drama director in America. Criminal Thoughts was directed by him. I've watched Criminal Thoughts before. It's a very exciting American drama. If it's their director who's directing Prison Break, I'll be more at ease. Hearing this, Mu Yuqing patted the other party's shoulder in amusement and said, Brother, I heard you guys talking about the copyright of Prison Break. I don't think you guys need to worry at all. Master Yang Yi pays great attention to the copyright of his works, like Soldier Assault and Drawing Sword. Didn't he choose a good director for these two works? If Chen Fengchen can't do it well, I don't think there are many directors in China who can do it well. That's true. A few of Yang Yi's fans laughed. Also, let me tell you guys, before the copyright of Prison Break was sold, there's a story behind it. I don't know if you guys know about it. Mu Yuqing deliberately kept them in suspense. Old Shi, don't be like this. Hurry up and tell us what you know. The fans shouted impatiently. Okay, listen to me. It's said that before Wolf TV station came, Global Pictures had their eyes on Prison Break, but they didn't offer good conditions and hoped that Yang Yi would adapt the work into a story that happened in China. Yang Yi didn't agree, so he kicked Global Pictures out. Of course, now that he's sold it to Wolf TV station, Master Yang Yi has offended Global Pictures. Mu Yuqing shrugged and said. This was what he saw in a post on Yang Yi's personal website. The people from Sahara Publishing did not clarify or admit it, which meant that it was very likely to be true. Really? Global Pictures. They're giants. What if he offended them? The fans were worried. It's okay. Wolf TV station's background is no worse than Global Pictures. They have the backing of Time Corporation. Yang Yi isn't afraid of them. Mu Yuqing comforted. But was he really not afraid? Mu Yuqing didn't know. It might be fine overseas, but Time Corporation's protection didn't extend to China. Mu Yuqing didn't want to think too much. After he paid for the book, he sat in the open-air coffee shop in the middle of the mall. He found a comfortable and quiet place and couldn't wait to start reading. Mu Yuqing was baffled by the first few pages. It seemed like there were 3 thieves. One was called Lu Xiang, one was called Wu Dun, and one was called Guanxing. They did something bad and wanted to hide, so they hid in an old grocery store. The description in the middle, such as the rusty washing machine in the grocery store, the dusty slippers, and the envelope that suddenly appeared, made Mu Yuqing confused and slightly creeped out. Could it be a horror story? If it was a horror story, then it wouldn't be good. Mu Yuqing didn't like horror stories. He was afraid of ghosts. It was still summer in Yangcheng in October. The scorching sun outside was scorching the earth. But the air conditioner in the mall was on. Mu Yuqing's short t-shirt was still sweating. It was obvious how resistant he was to ghost stories. But due to his great trust in Yang Yi, Mu Yuqing endured and continued reading. But as he continued reading, Mu Yuqing couldn't help himself. Relieving grocery store wasn't thick and it was small. Compared to Journey in the White Night, the word count was at least half. The story only had 5 chapters. Of course, each chapter had a few small sections. But unknowingly Mu Yuqing had already flipped through half of it. The story was beyond Mu Yuqing's expectations. Even though he had high expectations for Yang Yi, he didn't expect this book to be more imaginative than Journey in the White Night. First of all, just as Yang Yi said, it used the most common element in web novels, time travel. But the writing style in this book was so sophisticated that Mu Yuqing couldn't see any trace of web novels. Secondly, a puzzle-solving game that the grocery store owner, Grandpa Jiang, played with children had evolved into Grandpa Jiang's persistent work to point out the direction of the souls of some people who had lost their minds. Now, in this story, 3 thieves who made people doubt their character were coincidentally answering the questions of some people who had vague disputes in this grocery store that had fallen into a space-time bug. This series of stories that made people think deeply, and these choices that people might have made inadvertently, were like a stone thrown into a lake, creating ripples. These ripples slowly expanded and finally formed a surprising entanglement. The past, the present, and the future gradually merged together. It was very exciting. Mu Yuqing's coffee was cold. He didn't have time to take a sip. He couldn't bear to put down the book. During this time, the courier from Sahara Express called him. Mu Yuqing couldn't bear to go back, so he had to call his neighbor to help him sign it. He still wanted to continue reading. But unconsciously Mu Yuqing suddenly burst into tears. Yes, a man, sitting in an open-air coffee shop in the middle of a shopping mall, holding a book and crying. His emotions came so suddenly that Mu Yuqing forgot to wipe his tears to prevent others from seeing him as a joke. That wasn't important. What was important was the second chapter. All the previous stories were about a man named Song Ke. He didn't have a very good musical talent, but he still persisted and worked hard for his music dream. Mu Yuqing read the letter that the thieves wrote to Song Ke. Your persistent pursuit of music will not be in vain. Someone will be redeemed by your songs. The music you create will be passed down. He thought that Song Ke was going to succeed. But, who would have thought that Song Ke would sacrifice himself to save the children in a fire in an orphanage's performance event? Red light and darkness surrounded him at the same time. It seemed that someone was calling him, but he was powerless to answer. Ah, it's like this. Now is the final moment. I just have to keep believing, right? If it's really like what the letter says, Dad, I've left a footprint, right? Although I've lost a battle. Song Ke's inner monologue before his death made Mu Yuqing shed tears. He finally understood why the thieves wrote that sentence in the letter. Please always believe in this, until the last moment of your life. It turned out that the thieves already knew that Song Ke was going to die, and the little girl he saved would also step into the music world with his music, so that his music would be passed down. In the afternoon, Mu Yuqing finally finished reading Relieving Grocery Store. The moment he closed the book he couldn't help but smile. but there was also a lot of reluctance. The whole story seemed plain, but the short stories in each chapter were full of ups and downs, and it was very exciting. But wasn't the most beautiful thing still the intertwined connection between people in this letter? Mu Yuqing suddenly remembered a sentence he had read before. The water surface wrinkled by the wind, the faint fragrance of unknown wild flowers in the distance, the water plants gently dancing under the clear water, and the slight smile of strangers passing by on the wrong boat are all essential elements that make up this happy picture. And they are also fetters that can't be easily abandoned, just like our lives. The origin of these beautiful words could no longer be found, but so could the emotions that this book brought to him. Mu Yuqing took a sip of the cold coffee that seemed a little bitter, and Yang Yi's new song rang in his ears. It wasn't his imagination, but the shopping mall was indeed playing the song that Phoebe Studio released a few days ago, and then it became popular with many people. Because I just happened to meet you, leaving a footprint is beautiful. The wind blows, the flowers fall, and tears fall like rain, because I don't want to be separated. Yang Yi's falsetto, like a girl's voice, plucked at Mu Yuqing's heartstrings. This song was very nice, just like his new book, great. What _beautiful day. What a wonderful day. Although Mu Yuqing didn't have lunch and his stomach was rumbling, he was in a good mood. He still said a few words in English, held his book and danced. He didn't care about other people's curious and interesting gazes as he walked out. A science guy could also be very flirtatious. Chapter 582. Ding Xiang, why are you playing my song in the cafe? Hurry up and change it. I won't blame you even if you play Little Gua's fairy tale. Solace had just been released, so its impact was not obvious. On the other hand, Just Happened to Meet You, which was recognized by netizens as a song that Yang Yi had specially written for Murphy, was pushed to the top 10 of the new song sales chart by fans a few days after it was released. It was a good result, and Ding Xiang also contributed to the sales. The song Just Happened to Meet You, that was playing in the coffee shop, was the single that Ding Xiang bought online. Only Yang Yi felt a little awkward. He felt a little uncomfortable as he listened to his fake female voice echo in the shop. In the first place, he was not very willing to record this song. At home, it was one thing for him to use this song to confess to Mo Fei, but it was another thing for him to sing this song to others outside of his home. A man who was 187 meters tall, with muscles as thick as Yang Huan's thighs, was singing the song with a fake female voice. The scene was simply too beautiful. Yang Yi was still a little embarrassed, but because of Murphy's instigation, he recorded it in the end, and it spread all over the country. In his previous life, the doctor held a concert with a feather, and his brother had long hair and dressed up flirtatiously during his concert, as if he was a woman. If they could do it without caring about the opinions of the world, why would Yang Yi be worried about others pointing fingers at him? Moreover, this song was indeed sung for Murphy. Of course, at this time, Yang Yi was still a little uncomfortable listening to his own song in his own coffee shop. Is it okay? Brother Yang, this song of yours is very nice. Everyone likes it. Some customers even ordered this song yesterday. Ding Xiang smiled at Yang Yi. Ever since the issue of her younger brothers and sisters schooling in the stronghold, which she was most concerned about, was solved and she no longer had to bear the heavy financial burden, she seemed to have become much more relaxed. The smile on her face also increased, and she was no longer as reserved as before. Ding Xiang didn't seem to care about the money she had given her for the past 6 months. She was like a Buddhist epiphany, learning to embrace her own life. I also think it sounds good. Don't change it, okay? Mo Fei giggled with Yang Huan on the side. After returning from military training, Yang Huan was a little tanned, but she didn't mind. She was now splitting the canned sweets that Guadabeo had given her before she came back, and sharing them with Shishi and Murphy. Cece quite liked this kind of sweet food. She was holding a small piece, pinching it with both hands and nibbling on it like a little squirrel, revealing 2 white and cute front teeth. Does it taste good? Yang Huan asked. Shishi couldn't be bothered to reply. Her little mouth smacked her lips as she chewed. The sweetness flowed from the tip of her tongue to her heart. Although she didn't answer, her big, Happy eyes were filled with the answer. Murphy also ate a piece. The sweet and sour preserved peach was soft, tender, and refreshing, which suited her taste. She couldn't help but answer for her daughter. It's very good. Where did you buy this canned food? Murphy asked curiously. Although she politely stopped eating, she still wanted to eat it, so she planned to ask Yang Yi to buy some for her. I didn't buy it. I went to military training. I happened to meet the bald guy who fought with me last year, Guo Debao, and he gave me a can. Yang Huan said with a smile and stuffed the can over. Sister-in-law, since you like it, take it back and eat it. How can I? Someone gave it to you, and you haven't eaten it yet. Murphy quickly waved her hand. Auntie, I want more. She finished her small piece and sucked her fingers reluctantly. She looked at Yang Huan and said eagerly, eat it if you want. Yang Huan opened the lid and let Shishi reach in. Thank you, Auntie. Shishi's eyes lit up. She smiled happily and reached her little hand into the can. Normally, an adult would only be able to put their finger into this kind of wide-mouthed bottle, but for Cece's small and delicate hands, it was just enough to fit inside. Shishi looked at the glass side of the can and picked out a big piece of preserved peach. Then she continued to eat happily like a little squirrel. After taking care of Shishi, Yang Huan said to Murphy with a smile, Sister-in-law, it's okay. I came back last night and ate with Sister Ding Xiang. You can take it back and eat it. Now you are the most important person in our family. Murphy was too shy to take it. When she and Yang Huan were pushing it back and forth, Yang Yi came back helplessly. Seeing this, he asked them for the reason in confusion. Sai, I thought it was something serious. Guo Debao gave it to you, right? Yang Yi smiled. Yes, his parents made it. They sent 2 boxes over, but they split them up. I only have 1 can. Yang Huan quickly said after understanding Yang Yi's intention. She was worried that Yang Yi would make things difficult for Guo Debao. It's fine. His parents made it. I can ask Guo Debao to call his parents and ask them to make more and send it over. We can calculate the cost later. Yang Yi said with a wave of his hand. He was not too bothered. In his previous life, this kind of private workshop had become popular through WeChat. It was common for people to ask their friends to buy things for them. I don't think Guo Debao will take your money, but I don't think his family is very rich, Yang Huan said. That's true. Guo Debao is a very honest person. Yang Yi rubbed his chin and fell into deep thought. Forget it if it's too troublesome. Murphy tugged at Yang Yi's hand. She was worried that it would make things difficult for Yang Yi. After all, he needed a favor. I told you to give it to me. This can is for my sister-in-law. I can't eat so many sweet things anyway, Yang Huan said with a smile. Yang Yi would not care so much if it was something else. However, it was Murphy and Shishi's favorite food, so Yang Yi took it to heart. Yang Yi had an idea after thinking for a while. It doesn't matter if it's money or not. I'll repay Guo Debao in other ways. Huan, don't worry. Yang Yi picked up the candied fruit with a smile and said, I'll give this to Murphy first. I'll pay you back with interest when Guo Debao sends the candied fruit to me. Yang Yi's idea was to return the favor. Since Guo Debao might not want money, Yang Yi decided to help him. For example, he could ask Sahara Online Mall to sign a contract with Guo Debao's parents for the candied fruit. They would be able to sell their products on the mall. It would give them a good market. Of course, there were other problems in the process, such as formalizing the small workshop in the village and controlling the quality of the products. He would fork out some money and ask Sahara Online Mall to help Guo Debao's parents solve these problems. It would be a way to repay their kindness for the candied fruit, even the principal and the interest. Why do I feel like I've become a businessman? Yang Huan said with a smile. Now that you mention it, I just remembered that you're still a student. Why are you so free today? Instead of studying or helping Ding Xiang, you're just wandering around? Yang Yi raised his eyebrows and said, I'm already so old, but I'm still studying. Why don't you learn from me? Yang Yi also shook Samuel Adler's tool arrangement method tutorial in his hand and assumed the posture of a strict elder brother. I just came back from military training yesterday. I'm so tired. Can't you let me rest for a day? Yang Huan pretended to be wronged and looked at Murphy. Sister-in-law, My elder brother is bullying me. Murphy watched the siblings bicker with amusement. However, Murphy still helped to persuade Yang Yi. Alright, it's a special day. Let Huan Huan have some fun. You're the only one who spoils her. Yang Yi smiled helplessly. He picked up the coffee pot on the table and went to the bar to ask Ding Xiang to pour some more. Hee, sister-in-law, you're the best. Yang Huan walked over happily, sat on the edge of the seat, and held Mo Fei's hand affectionately. At this moment, Shishi had finished the candied peach in her hand. However, it seemed that she had not had enough. She looked at the canned food in front of her mother. I want more. Chapter 583. Autumn rain followed by cold. In late October, a light drizzle marked the beginning of autumn in Jiangcheng. Although it was only physically cold, the children in Springfield Kindergarten put on thick coats. Only today, because the weather was sunny and the sun was warm outside, the teachers allowed the children to take off their coats and play outdoors in the fresh air. Shishi, Xian air, let's play hopscotch? Yang Luoqi suggested. Yang Luoqi's body was flexible, so she liked to play this game. However, she was not the only one who liked to play this game. Shishi, Chen Shiyin, Nan Zhaoyu, and even Lan Xian liked it too. Lan Xian was chubby, so she often lost when playing hopscotch. However, the more she lost, the more she liked it. As soon as she heard Yang Luoqi's suggestion, the energetic Lan Xian shouted excitedly, Okay. Hopscotch. Hopscotch. Shishi was also very happy. She held Yang Luoqi's hand and jumped up and down. I'll go too. Chen Shiyin and Nan Zhaoyu came over. At the same time, Shishi's good friend, Lu Weisha, also came over. She said in Chinese with good pronunciation, Angel, I want it. Let's go together. Can I? After half a month of interaction, not only Shishi's Swedish, but also Lu Weisha's Chinese, and all the children's English had improved significantly. Although the grammar of the foreign language the children spoke was not standard, they learned some simple words very quickly. After that, they spoke more and tried more. The speed of improvement was faster than some adults who learned foreign languages until their brains exploded. For example, little Han. Now Lu Weisha could speak and listen in on some simple daily conversations. She had completely integrated into Shishi's small circle. After playing with her friends, Lu Weisha became a lot more cheerful. She wouldn't have dared to take the initiative to join the game half a month ago. Angel was Yang Luoqi's English name. Lu Weisha couldn't tell the difference between Shishi and Chi-Chi, so she chose to call Shishi Cici and Yang Luoqi Angel. Yang Luoqi nodded and said to Lu Weisha, Sure, let's play together. The hopscotch game was in the middle of the kindergarten. It was originally drawn by the outdoor class teacher with chalk for the children, but later the teacher found that the children liked this game very much, and the chalk words on the ground were easy to wear, so the kindergarten used paint to draw a few houses on the ground to prevent the children from fighting over them. Shishi and the others found an empty one. They picked up a small stone and began to play rock, paper, scissors. Scissors, rock, paper. The children shouted the slogan, and together, they threw their fists and stretched their fingers. Even Lu Weisha followed suit. In fact, she had already played with Shishi and the others, so she roughly knew the rules. However, she didn't pronounce the slogan correctly. Demons eat head, paper. This didn't hinder them. After a few rounds of rock, paper, scissors, it was decided that Shishi would be the first to jump. I can be the first to get the house. Shishi held the small stone and said happily to her friends. Because this sentence was a little complicated, she used simple Swedish to speak to Lu Weisha. She gestured with one finger and said, I am the fastest. Lu Weisha grinned. Nay. No, you're not. In the end, she said it in Chinese. After Shishi set the flag, she began to jump. She first threw the stone on the first square, then began to jump on one leg. She jumped from the first square until she reached the fourth and fifth squares. Then, she jumped on the sixth square with one leg and landed on the seventh and eighth squares. She then jumped up and turned around. The little girl's legs were very long, and her jumping ability was also very good. When she jumped up high, her long hair swayed like a horsetail whisk, dancing in the air like a young girl dancing ballet. I can jump very fast. She gasped for breath, but she didn't forget to tell her friends cheerfully. You can't talk, you have to jump quickly. Chen Shuryan shouted like a teacher in the moral education department. Well, she continued to jump. She jumped back to the second square, then bent down on one leg to pick up the small stone on the ground. The little girl was swaying and her right leg was shaking. When she finally bent down, she couldn't support herself. She supported herself with her two small hands on the ground and picked up the small stone. This posture was quite worrisome. Fortunately, the ground was very flat and covered with a layer of smooth plastic that looked a bit like a poster. Otherwise, the little girl's small pink palm supporting the ground would make one's heart ache. After she picked up the small stone, she stood up unsteadily, but she continued to jump. However, when she jumped to the 7th and 8th squares and turned around, she didn't jump well. She turned around and stepped on the line, and was caught by the observant Chen Shuryan. Aha, Cici, you failed! Chen Shuryan cried out in high spirits. She was dancing with joy as if she had won. Okay, then who's next? She looked down at her feet and sighed regretfully. Then, like a little adult, she picked up the small stone and asked, My turn, my turn. Nan Zhaoyu couldn't hold back and happily ran over to take the stone. The other children pointed at Nan Zhaoyu and said, His turn, his turn. Lu Weisha was also grinning from ear to ear. She followed the others and shouted, Knife him, knife him. It was Nan Zhaoyu's turn to jump. Nan Zhaoyu and she often played hopscotch, so they were quite skilled. Perhaps the boys' athletic standards were quite good. Nan Zhaoyu didn't make a mistake like she when he jumped to the third round. However, at this time, a group of boys including Wang Shijuan passed by. They were all boys, and they were shouting that they wanted to play the seesaw. Just then, they saw Nan Zhaoyu playing hopscotch. It was unknown who started it, but they all laughed and shouted, Nan Zhaoyu playing hopscotch with a girl. Nan Zhaoyu is also a girl, right? He plays with girls every day. Not only did they say that, but they also made funny faces at Nan Zhaoyu. Nan Zhaoyu's heart was still quite fragile. When he heard these guys shouting, he jumped the wrong way. He didn't wait for Chen Shuryan's reminder. He pouted and walked down with a sad face. What did they say? Lu Weisha didn't understand, but from their expressions, they definitely didn't say anything good. She couldn't help but ask Shi. Don't quarrel. Shi was angry, but she didn't have enough confidence to say that to the boys. Ha ha ha. Shi is Nan Zhaoyu's wife. The naughty boys even teased Shi. Don't quarrel. Yang Luoqi said to Lan Xian worriedly, but Yang Luoqi's voice was too soft. They said that Nan Zhaoyu is playing with a girl. Shi explained to Lu Weisha, but Lu Weisha still didn't understand what she said. Lu Weisha was confused and asked again in Swedish. I don't understand. Shi, can you say it again? Cici had no choice but to gesture with her fingers and explain in Rue in English. You're right, he Nan Zhaoyu _spell play, and we are like a girl like a girl. Lu Weisha understood, but it was just as she had expected. No. Lu Weisha stood in front of the boys and said in Chinese, which she didn't know much. Apologize. Apologize. Apologize to Nan Zhaoyu. When Cici saw that all her friends had stepped forward bravely, her sense of justice was bursting. She also stepped forward and said angrily. Chapter 584. When they were in the middle class, the children's gender consciousness had not yet awakened. However, as they began to grow up a little and were instilled with different ideas in their daily lives, the little boys and girls seemed to have begun to draw boundaries. It could not be said that they were completely separated. Like Nan Zhaoyu, some boys still played with their original friends, and Wang Xian would sometimes follow her brother Wang Shijuan. However, some boys had more sensitive thoughts. Wang Shijuan gradually became disgusted with his sister following him, afraid that his friends would laugh at him. But today, what they said was a bit too much. Shi did not have a complete understanding of the term wife, but she still felt very uncomfortable. How could these boys be so bad? They laughed at Nan Zhaoyu, and now they were talking about her? That mischievous grin made Cici feel wronged and angry at the same time. Lu Weisha's education since she was young did not teach her to be submissive. She bravely stood up for her friends, which also gave Cece and the others courage. Shishi and Chunshuryan angrily pressed forward. Shishi was actually a bit lacking in confidence. The little girl had not experienced any fierce battles since she was young. She panicked when she was about to quarrel with others. You have to apologize to Nanjiaoyu. No, I don't apologize. I'll tell Teacher Mu. Shishi said to the boys with a trembling voice. She even used Lan Xian's big move, tell Teacher Mu. Yang Luoqi and Lan Xian also followed, but Yang Luoqi was more flustered. Her eyes were red and she sadly wiped the corners of her eyes. Girls only know how to cry. We won't apologize to you. The boy who mocked Shishi just now was very bold. He made a face, snorted, and shouted loudly. It was not as simple as quarreling. The boys developed later. Lu Weisha, Shishi, and Chen Shuryan were actually taller than them, especially Lu Weisha. The sense of oppression from her height made these boys feel that they were not manly enough. Naturally, they were eager to resist. You need to apologize. Lu Weisha insisted. I'm not playing with you. We're going to play in the sand. A boy felt impatient and called out. The few of them were about to leave. The former little devil Chen Shuryan had not been a big brother for many years, but today she was going to stand up for her good friend. Chen Shuryan pulled the boy and tugged at his clothes. You're not allowed to leave. A war was about to break out. Yang Yi had been studying with the old professors of the School of Classical Music for a while. From the early days of appreciating and distinguishing various instruments to the present analysis of the structure of some classical pieces, he seemed to have entered a brand new world. Like a sponge, he desperately absorbed new knowledge. The range of his classes was very wide. Sometimes he would follow the second-year professors, sometimes he would go to the graduate classes, and sometimes he would ask the professors to talk to him about some of the things he wanted to know. Therefore, during the day, he would send Shishi to kindergarten and send Murphy to the studio to record songs by herself. After that, he would go to Jiangchuan for classes. In his free time, he would drink 2 cups of coffee at the coffee shop. His days were very fulfilling. After 2 classes, Yang Yi strolled around the campus. He wanted to walk around and feel the freedom of a university student. Then he would go back and drive Murphy to lunch. But on the campus, Yang Yi saw an old acquaintance. Tang Kaitai. Yang Yi saw Tang Kaitai, but Tang Kaitai did not see him. And at this time, Tang Kaitai was intercepted by a few angry students. Yang Yi saw it and raised his eyebrows. He went to the side and stood behind a big tree. He pretended to look up at the canopy, but his ears were listening to their quarrel. Get lost. I don't have time to talk to you. Wow, my dad is Tang Rong. You really talk big. But your dad has been suspended. I'm afraid he will go to jail. You can't be arrogant for more than a few days, right? Tang Kaitai's face turned red and white. He gritted his teeth and said, Who said my dad will go to jail? It's just an investigation. My dad will be fine. When he comes back, all of you will remember this. So what if I remember? I'm studying architecture. Can your dad not let me find a job? Damn, you even framed Qianli Chuanshu. I don't like you for a long time. There was a boy who was in the same school as Lu Xiaoshu. He stood up for Qianli Chuanshu and fiercely spat in front of Tang Kaitai. Who said that I framed them? You have to take legal responsibility for what you say. Qianli Chuanshu signed the contract. Who told them to be so stupid? They didn't listen to the company, so they deserve to be frozen. Tang Kaitai shouted angrily. He was also angry and did not want to let the other party feel comfortable. Sure enough, the boy was enraged. He exposed his sleeves and shouted, What did you say to me? Say it again and see if I don't beat you to death. Tang Kaitai was actually a little scared, but he still wanted to save his face and shouted, Come on, hit me. See if my lawyer will send you to jail. Pauper. Luckily, a few friends held the boy down and did not let the boy hit Tang Kaitai impulsively. Ignore him. This kind of person is a grasshopper after autumn. He won't be able to jump around for more than a few days. His friends advised. Sooner or later, someone will find out about him. He already killed someone. Who said I killed someone? I didn't kill anyone. Tang Kaitai said angrily. He was really wronged about this. Zhuozai Luyu's news not only made Tang Kaitai's image of a scammer deeply ingrained in people's hearts, but under the word of mouth, Tang Kaitai's car accident evolved into a car accident that killed someone. Many netizens were angry that Tang Kaitai disregarded human life and escaped legal responsibility. So, even if Tang Rong was suspended for investigation, they were not satisfied. They called for Tang Kaitai to get the punishment he deserved. Some extreme netizens even hoped that Tang Kaitai would pay with his life. You have done too many bad things. You will get retribution. It's not that there won't be retribution. It's just that the time hasn't come yet. The few students who stopped Tang Kaitai did not quarrel with Tang Kaitai anymore. After all, they were just students, not thugs. They stopped Tang Kaitai just to ask if his conscience was eaten by a dog. Don't be arrogant. I will come back sooner or later. Tang Kaitai saw that they were leaving and could not help but say a harsh word. But in fact, Tang Kaitai did not know what to do in the future. His father had been isolated for investigation, and the family was in a mess. Tang Kaitai also came back to school to get something. As a young master, he had long lost the halo of the past. When he walked on campus, he was like a rat crossing the street. He was despised, ridiculed, and almost beaten up. But the pride in his heart made him unwilling to bow his head. After Tang Kaitai angrily took his things and drove away, Yang Yi walked out from behind the big tree where he was hiding. He who is unjust is doomed to destruction. Yang Yi shook his head gently. He felt that he did not need to add fuel to the fire. Tang Kaitai had been abandoned by the world, and had already received the greatest punishment for this young master. At this moment, the phone in Yang Yi's pocket suddenly rang. Teacher Mu. Yang Yi looked at the caller ID and was a little puzzled, but he did not dare to neglect it and picked it up. Hello, Teacher Mu. Why are you calling me at this time today? Did something happen to Shishi? Yang Shi's father, it's like this. Yang Shi fought with other children in kindergarten. Do you have time to come over and take a look? It's not very serious. Teacher Mu did not finish his words. Yang Yi, whose heart was in his mouth, interrupted her. I'll be right there. Yang Yi turned around and ran to the back door to get the car from the coffee shop. Shishi fought with other children? Was she injured? Yang Yi's mind was not filled with why Shishi would fight with other children, but he was worried about his daughter's safety. On the way, as he drove, Yang Yi called Murphy and told her not to worry about Shishi's situation. At the same time, he asked Mo Xiaowan to take care of Murphy and take her to lunch at noon. Murphy was also worried sick. She repeatedly asked Yang Yi to call her when there was any new news. When Yang Yi arrived at the kindergarten, he saw the little girl who was crying her eyes out. Chapter 585. When Yang Yi saw Cici crying like a baby, his heart tightened. He took big strides and ran to his daughter's side. He bent his knees and squatted down asking, Cici, what's wrong? Were you beaten? Dad is here. Tell Dad, where were you beaten? While he was worried, Yang Yi was actually quite angry. He was reluctant to beat his own daughter. Which little kid was so bold as to beat Shishi? However, Yang Yi was so focused on Shishi that he didn't notice Teacher Mu, who was smiling bitterly next to him. Shishi raised her big eyes, which were hazy from crying, and recognized her father's big face. At this moment, her heart seemed to erupt again like a volcano, and strong grievances surged up like magma. Papa! Shishi cried and threw herself into her father's arms. Her small hands shrank in front of her father's chest like a frightened deer, and she cried even harder in her father's arms. Tell Dad, where were you beaten? Are you injured? Yang Yi asked while checking his daughter's body. Her face was fine. Except for her red eyes, the rest of her skin was still pink and tender, and there were no traces of external injuries. Yang Yi held Shishi's small hands and looked at them. There were no bruises on her arms. Yang Yi gently pressed her body, and he didn't see her in pain. Could it be an internal injury? Shishi sobbed and shook her little head. In fact, she recovered a little in her father's arms, but she cried so hard that her throat was blocked and she couldn't speak. Finally, Teacher Mu couldn't help it. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said to Yang Yi, Dad, Shishi, in fact, other children didn't beat Shishi. It was she who pushed a boy down and accidentally punched another boy. But it's not Shishi's fault. The scene at that time was indeed like that. The two groups of children were in a confrontation and were suppressed by the tall Lu Weisha. The little boys felt that their dignity was being challenged. Therefore, in order to show off his manliness, Wang Shijuan, who was more muscular, rushed up angrily and pushed Lu Weisha, who knew that Lu Weisha would only grow taller. The Swedish girl fell down after being pushed by Wang Shijuan. She sat on the ground and cried. "Don't cry, get up." Wang Shijuan was actually dumbfounded at that time. He thought that Lu Weisha had faked the fall and was afraid that the teacher would see her crying, so he hurriedly tried to pull Lu Weisha up. When Shishi saw that her good friend was being bullied, she became hot-headed. With tears in her eyes, she puckered her lips and rushed forward to push Wang Shijuan away. Shishi had inherited her father's genes. Although she usually didn't show off, she was really strong. When she was angry, she threw Wang Shijuan from the side and rolled a few times on the ground. But she didn't want to fight with others. After the little girl did these actions, she started to cry. She even choked on her sobs and muttered, "You can't fight. Fighting is not a good child." The naughtiest little boy from before, the one who had badmouthed Shishi, was very close to Wang Shijuan. At this time he ran up angrily and grabbed one of Shishi's small hands, shouting, "Yangshi, you hit me." However, at this time, Shishi wasn't in a good state. She felt that her left wrist was in pain from being grabbed. She struggled to break free in a panic, but she couldn't break free, so she subconsciously waved her right hand and hit the little boy's chest. No one could tell how much strength she used. In any case, the little boy fell down like Wang Shijuan, but he still had the strength to cry on the ground in fear. Shishi was frightened by her two violent acts. Moreover, the little boy's words, "Yangshi, you hit me," were like a thorn in the little girl's heart. Sob sob. "I didn't do it on purpose." Shishi squatted on the ground at one side, hugging her knees, and cried even louder. Teacher Shen, who heard the noise and rushed over, was a step slower. The cries of the four children on the ground were enough to intertwine into a symphony. Of course, Yang Yi could only roughly reconstruct the situation, just now after listening to Teacher Mu's explanation. This was because these were all told to the teacher by other children, such as the People's Discipline Inspector, Comrade Chen Shiyin, and the righteous hero, Comrade Lan Xian. However, Wang Shijuan and the other boys, who stopped crying later, also confirmed this point. It wasn't a big deal. The children who had been hit by Shishi had been checked by the kindergarten doctor. They were still alive and kicking, but Shishi couldn't stop crying and trembling in fear. Teacher Mu was worried that it would leave a psychological shadow on the children, so he called Yang Yi over. "It's all our teacher's fault for not taking good care of the children." Teacher Shen went to the bathroom at that time. He didn't expect this to happen. "This is our problem. As for the children, I told them to apologize to Lu Weisha, Nan Jiaoyu, and Shishi. But now Shishi's mood is still unstable." Teacher Mu apologized to Yang Yi. After Yang Yi understood the ins and outs of the matter, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He couldn't completely believe the teacher's words, but it wasn't too big of a problem. He would ask Shishi in detail later. The main thing was that Shishi wasn't injured, which made him feel relieved. However, after the little girl hit people, she felt wronged. This was a little unexpected for Yang Yi. "How are the children who were hit by Shishi? Are their parents here?" Yang Yi gently patted the back of Shishi's head and asked Teacher Mu. Now he still had to appease Shishi's mood. Preaching and the like could be left for at home. After informing them of this matter, they also came over. "They are in Teacher Shen's office. Then they said that they want to apologize to you." Teacher Mu said. "Apologize to me?" Yang Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. In fact, Yang Yi was still a little annoyed with those little brats. If Shishi hadn't beaten them up to relieve some of his anger, Yang Yi would have really asked their parents how to educate their children. Their mouths were so smelly. Very quickly, Yang Yi's anger dissipated like smoke. This was because Wang Shijuan's father and the other boy's father still apologized to Yang Yi very sincerely. They took the initiative to promise that when they went back, they would educate their children so that they wouldn't say such harsh words to their classmates in the future. These two fathers were both dressed in suits and leather shoes. Obviously, they were white-collar workers. They were gentle and cultured. Of course, it was also because their children were fine, and the teachers also told them the cause of the story that they felt guilty for neglecting to discipline their children because they were busy with work. It's just a small conflict between the children. It's okay. Yang Yi couldn't get angry when he heard them say this. He smiled slightly and nodded at them. However, it wasn't over yet. The two parents returned to the class and called Wang Shijuan and the other boy over, asking them to apologize to Shishi. Yang Yi also said a simple apology to the two uneasy boys on behalf of Shishi. After all, no matter what, his girl used force to knock down the other party. The other parents weren't angry and even sincerely apologized. He had to at least put on an act. After they left, Lan Xian, Lu Weisha and Zhaoyu, and a few other friends also came to visit Shishi. Finally, after a while, Shishi's mood finally stabilized a lot. However, she still couldn't get over it, so although she didn't cry, she still refused to leave her father's arms like a little kangaroo who was afraid of losing its support. Yang Yi simply asked for half a day's leave from Teacher Mu. Daddy will accompany you today. He turned back, picked up the little girl, and rubbed her little head. As he walked out, he smiled lovingly and said, "It's almost lunchtime. Let's go for a big meal, and then you can have a good chat with Daddy, okay?" Okay. The little girl found a warm and comfortable position in her father's arms. Then, her face was attached to her father's thick chest. She listened to her father's strong and powerful heartbeat that could calm her down, and then gently nodded. Chapter 586. Research has shown that when one's mood is unstable, the body, especially the brain, needs energy replenishment. At this time, the sugar, flour and other carbohydrates in desserts are digested quickly, and can quickly meet the energy needs at this time. In addition, people can experience a kind of happiness in the process of eating desserts, which also helps to relieve tension. This is also why some girls need to eat something sweet during their menstrual period. Of course, Shishi was mentally tired purely because of the combination of negative emotions such as worry, fear and self-blame. Yang Yi reversed the order of the French dishes, and asked the waiter to serve the dessert first. He also carefully helped the little girl cut the small opal cake on the big plate into small pieces, and then let her eat it with a fork. After all, the opal cake has 6 layers, and the little girl's mouth is not big, she can't eat a whole piece. Cici ate the cake piece by piece. The sweetness and softness of the coffee syrup and chocolate sauce, as well as the softness and fragrance of the almond sponge cake, seemed to melt on the tip of her tongue layer by layer, turning into energy bit by bit and merging into her limbs and bones. The beauty of the food finally made the little girl gradually loosen her frown. Her mouth was full, and her slender and beautiful eyelashes moved. She raised her eyelids and looked at her father with a little smile in her big eyes. Of course, she seemed to be a little embarrassed. "Is it delicious?" Yang Yi smiled at his daughter. From the beginning to the end, his gentle voice and kind smile made Shishi feel that her father didn't blame her. The little girl was a little relieved and nodded to her father. "Papa, you also eat." Shishi stretched out her small arms and forked a piece of cake on the fork that was handed to her. "Well, it's really sweet." Yang Yi didn't let Shishi down. He stretched out his neck and gently bit the cake. While eating, he gave the little girl a thumbs up. Hee. Shishi finally showed a smile. Seeing that his daughter's mood was relieved, Yang Yi decided to strike while the iron was hot. "Actually, I think you did well today. Although you fought with a boy, you didn't lose. You didn't let me down." After Yang Yi praised his daughter, he suddenly felt that his words were not very good. He had exposed his violent nature, and this had a bad influence on Shishi, who was a girl. Therefore, when he saw Shishi's shocked expression, Yang Yi quickly added, "Of course, I'm not encouraging you to fight. I just want to tell you that you didn't do anything wrong. You don't have to blame yourself too much." Shishi was a little confused. She frowned slightly and asked in confusion, But Mom said we can't fight. Fighting is not a good thing." "That depends on the situation. Why do you think they're fighting?" Yang Yi smiled and said, "If you're like Wang Shijuan and the others, bullying others and fighting, then you're not a good child. You're disobedient, right?" Shishi blinked and said, but they apologized. Why did it seem like the topic had suddenly changed? Yang Yi had to twist his brain to keep up with his daughter's rhythm. He thought for a moment and said, yes, they apologized later, so they were okay later. But they bullied Nan Xiaoyu and Lu Weisha. They're not good children. Xixi finally nodded. But you didn't bully them. You were helping your friends, and not letting them be bullied. That's why you stood up for them, Yang Yi said. What do you mean by standing up for them? When talking to Xixi, he couldn't use idioms that she didn't understand. The little girl asked in confusion again. It means to help your friends. Yang Yi said patiently, right? Our Xixi is very good, just like your favorite sister Elsa. She has powerful magic, and she eventually used it to protect her sister Anna. Here she fought with the bad guys. It's not a bad thing. On the contrary, it shows that she's very brave. After giving an example, Xixi quickly understood. The little girl's brain was very flexible. She said, you can't beat Sister Anna, you can only beat the bad guys. Yes. Yang Yi snapped his fingers with relief and said to his daughter with a smile, that's the truth. Dad will give another example. Do you think Dad is very good at Kung Fu? This could definitely be said to be Xixi's proudest thing. The little girl puffed out her chest, and her little face was full of admiration for her father. She said very seriously, Papa is the best. Haha, thank you, Xixi baby. Yang Yi's complacency showed on his eyebrows, but he didn't let it get to the point. Dad, you've never used your Kung Fu to bully others. You only use it to protect Mom and Xixi, right? Papa can beat the big bad wolf. The little girl's thoughts drifted again. Yes, bad guys like the big bad wolf. Dad will beat them until they don't dare to show up. Yang Yi tried to turn the topic back and said, in the same way, Xixi also fought with them to protect her good friends. So you don't have to blame yourself too much, because you didn't do anything wrong. Xixi looked at her father with some joy, but she was still a little unsure. She whispered, really? Of course Dad is proud of you. It's because Xixi is so responsible. She even defeated 2 boys. Yang Yi smiled, stretched out his long arm, rubbed Xixi's little head and said, you're indeed Yang Yi's daughter. Hee. The little girl didn't understand the meaning of the last sentence, but being praised by her father like this, she was still a little happy, and she smiled a little embarrassedly. However, Dad wants to tell you one more thing, which is when you should stand up, when you should learn to endure, and then tell Dad to help you solve it. After letting his daughter accept his values, Yang Yi still had to say a few more words. After all, he didn't want his daughter to become a hero. Without superpowers, it wasn't like living in a movie. Heroes would also sacrifice themselves. Yang Yi just wanted the little girl to learn to protect herself, and that was enough. Xixi obediently sat on the chair opposite, and looked at her father with her big eyes. Unless you think it's necessary, or you're much more powerful than the opponent, and you can definitely defeat him, then you can make a move. Yang Yi put on a boxing stance, gently waved his fist and said to Xixi, Dad will teach you some martial arts in the future, how to protect yourself and at the same time, knock down the bad guys at the fastest speed. But Yang Yi withdrew his fist, raised a finger, and said very seriously, most of the time, if you can avoid making a move, don't make a move. Xixi, you just need to remember that Dad is the most powerful, and then if you encounter a problem, tell Dad to help you solve it. If you encounter a bad guy, tell Dad to help you beat him until he pisses his pants. Hearing this, Xixi couldn't help but smile. She giggled and said, Dad beat the bad guy, and sent him flying with one punch. This joke probably came from the short story Yang Yi told to Xixi about Bunny Bears. These somewhat nonsensical stories were made up by Yang Yi according to the character's framework. He had never seen Bunny Bears, and only knew that there were Baldy Chong, Big Bear, Bramble, and other characters. In addition, Yang Yi occasionally took Xixi to the boxing gym to play with Lan Xian and Chen Shiyin. So in these stories, there were many plots of Big Bear and Bramble beating the bad guys with their big fists. Looking at the little girl's happy smile, Yang Yi felt relieved. He smiled and shook his head. For some reason, Yang Yi remembered that Teacher Mu seemed to have said that Xixi had beaten a little boy with one punch. Could it be because she was good at boxing? Of course, Yang Yi still decided to slowly teach Xixi some simple fighting skills. It didn't matter if she didn't learn kung fu. In the future, if she encountered a fight with a boy like today, his daughter couldn't be at a disadvantage. Obviously, Yang Yi's way of teaching his daughter was still a little difficult for Murphy to accept. In the afternoon, Murphy saw her daughter, who had worried her for a long time. In the end, she heard the little girl happily tell her mother that she had bravely beaten the bad guy today, and that she had also received her father's praise. Murphy's pair of beautiful eyes immediately glared at Yang Yi. Although she didn't expose Yang Yi in front of Shi, when they went back, Murphy still grabbed Yang Yi and forced him to say that he wouldn't teach his daughter to be violent or a tomboy. Only then did she stop. However, I was still very surprised that Shi could defeat two boys. Murphy snuggled in Yang Yi's arms and turned to look at her sweetly sleeping daughter. She couldn't help but smile softly. I usually think that she's very obedient. She doesn't even get angry with others. I didn't expect that she could. She can also explode into a small universe, right? Yang Yi helped her find the words to describe her. This is the first time I've heard of such a word, but it's quite vivid. Murphy laughed. Haha, after all that talk, you're actually secretly happy. Yang Yi pinched Murphy's nose and laughed. You even said that I shouldn't teach Shi how to fight. I didn't say that I was happy. After all, fighting is not good, but Shi can't be bullied and not fight back. Murphy stubbornly defended herself. I hope that no one will bully anyone. Alright. You've been worried for a long time today. Hurry up and go to sleep. With me here, no one will dare to bully our daughter. Yang Yi coaxed Murphy. Chapter 587. With her father's timely psychological counseling, the fight did not leave a shadow in Shi's heart. The little girl was still happily carrying her small school bag to kindergarten the next day. At noon, Yang Yi secretly visited his daughter, and did not find anything unexpected. The tail end of October quietly passed, and in the blink of an eye, it was November. In the past October, Yang Yi and Murphy released 2 songs. The first song, Just Happened to Meet You, got into the top 10, but it was still a breath away from the top. But the second song, Today You Will Marry Me, sung by Yang Yi and Murphy, was their wedding song. Fans had been looking forward to it for a few months. Once it was released, with the fresh style, sweet singing, and the theme of happiness, it suddenly became a star song on the best-selling list. On the first day of its release, it pushed its own, Just Happened to Meet You, out of the top 10. Then, only 2 days later, the song actually reached the top of the best-selling list. It was really the first place. Murphy, after Same Love as the Ink Road, Coming Across the Sea to See You, In My Voice, and Listen to the Sea, took the 5th song to top the best-selling list. It was not a rare thing for a song to reach the top, but this song's reaching the top still shocked the entire entertainment industry. Just Happened to Meet You was the same as the previous song, Want to Sing Me to You. Because Murphy did not actively participate in the chart-topping program, and did not do much promotion, resulting in a lack of follow-up. When it failed to reach the top, the media had already asserted that it was impossible for Murphy and Yang Yi to get the first place with their lazy mode. No matter how good the song was, because of the lack of promotion, it was absolutely not comparable to other songs that had put a lot of effort into promotion. Their statement was reasonable, and they did not deliberately trample on Murphy to support other singers. Their position was very objective, and their starting point was to prove that Yang Yi and Murphy's song release in this special period was an irrational approach. But who knew that Today You Will Marry Me would explode with such power? And it didn't just stay at the top for a while. This song actually stayed at the top for more than half a month until mid-November, when Zhu Jie released his new single. Of course, this happened later. The reason why Today You Will Marry Me could be popular for so long was because it was popular among young people, especially those who were about to enter the wedding hall. In a street interview on Shanghai TV station's Entertainment News, many young people expressed that they wanted to use this song for their wedding. The lyrics of this song are so sweet. We can't imagine how romantic it would be if my wife and I sang this song at the wedding, the young man on the street said with emotion. However, even though the song had reached the top of the charts, Murphy had stopped all her work after her second fan meeting in mid-October. Whether it was physical or mental work, she stopped and waited at home for her delivery. The expected delivery date was in December, and there was only about a month left. During this period, Murphy would at most go to the coffee shop with Yang Yi. She basically wouldn't go anywhere else. Now that Murphy's belly was so big, she had to be careful at all times. Even in the bedroom, because she was worried that Shishi's little feet would kick around after she fell asleep. Murphy moved out of the master bedroom and slept next door. In addition to the song, Today You Will Marry Me, which received a lot of attention, Yang Yi's new book, Relieving Grocery Store, released on October 10th, also received unprecedented praise. Compared to Journey by Day-Night, which was slightly niche, and the dark story would make many readers feel uncomfortable, Relieving Grocery Store was much more gentle. Many readers didn't feel satisfied after reading it once and wanted to read it again. Only by reading it many times could they carefully sort out the time clues and character relationships in these 5 chapters. How could they not introduce such a wonderful book to their friends? Therefore, under the spontaneity of the readers, Relieving Grocery Store became more and more popular. Not only did many bookstores run out of stock, but on the official website of Sahara Online Mall, the book almost sold out of stock. Fortunately, Sahara Publishing House urgently printed more copies to satisfy the book fans' desire to buy. It was also because of this that Relieving Grocery Store took first place on the hot new book list in October. In the beginning of November, it was still far ahead. Under this terrifying momentum, some media outlets even reported a small farce. Because of the popularity of this book, the Mystery Novel Association and the Online Novel Association, as well as a few other associations, quarreled over the ownership of this book. The Mystery Novel Association was the first to identify Relieving Grocery Store as belonging to this genre. Moreover, according to Sahara Online Mall's directory, this book also belonged to this genre. Note 1. Journey by Day-Night is also a mystery novel. Yang Yi is an outstanding young mystery novel author. This work of his, whether it's the plot or the logic of the story, has the characteristics of a mystery novel. The association's chairman said. Yang Yi started off as a web novel writer. He himself said that this novel uses the elements of web novels, time travel. Moreover, this kind of mystery should belong to the fantasy genre of web novels. The Online Novel Association didn't want to be outdone, and wanted to snatch this hot steamed bun. Note 2. In the end, nothing was decided. After all, no one stipulated that a novel could only belong to one genre. Therefore, both novel associations listed Relieving Grocery Store under their association's name. However, both sides were unwilling to admit the rationality of the other party. Speaking of Sahara Online Mall, it had to be said that after the second round of financing, Sahara Online Mall had been brewing a new big move. A shopping carnival on Double 11. This was something that Yang Yi and Fu Jun had mentioned long ago, and they had registered the copyright with the Copyright Bureau early on. Not only had they registered for Double 11, but they had also registered for Double 12, Double 9, Double 6, and other shopping festivals. If it wasn't for the fact that they couldn't register for traditional festivals, Sahara Online Mall would have snatched these copyrights. With this copyright, even if Sahara Online Mall didn't hold Double 12 and only held Double 11, other online shopping platforms could only follow the trend of some holidays without any gimmicks. There was no way they could compete effectively with them. Of course, releasing this big move was also to widen the gap between Sahara Online Mall and its competitors. Now that Sahara Online Mall was developing rapidly, it couldn't ignore the fierce pursuit of its competitors. After a year of fever, the online shopping platform project had eliminated about 80% of its competitors. Among them, there were copycats who ran away after making a fortune and scamming investors. There were also ambitious entrepreneurs who lost so much that their pants were about to be sold. The few remaining online shopping platforms were all very strong competitors. There was an online shopping platform that specialized in the 3 northeastern provinces. With its geographical advantage, it still took a bite of Sahara Online Mall's market share in its territory. There were also 2 online shopping platforms with the support of large venture capital funds that Fu Jun had previously rejected. Although their development was a step slower, they also relied on their strong funds to build their own logistics network. If Sahara Online Mall didn't move forward, it might be overtaken by others in a year or two. Of these two, one imitated the operation model of Sahara Online Mall, and the other was the Taobao model in Yang Yi's previous life. It provided a platform for individuals to open online stores. When Yang Yi found out about it, he was shocked and paid a lot of attention to it. However, the Taobao model in this world wasn't easy to do. Individual online stores weren't like in his previous life, where they sold fake and inferior goods wantonly and used people's greedy mentality to gather popularity and sales. This world paid too much attention to copyrights. This kind of online store basically had no way to survive. Without the existence of fake and inferior goods, the value of the brand was reflected. Individual online stores' cell phone brands were too low in popularity. Unless they made innovations, they couldn't compete with well-known products. Therefore, the Taobao model couldn't let this online shopping platform achieve a curve. However, it had to be said that its existence still promoted the development of individual online stores. This online shopping platform also occupied a certain market share and became a strong competitor of Sahara Online Mall. For this reason, Yang Yi also asked Fu Jun to adjust the strategy and support a group of excellent brands to set up their flagship stores in Sahara Online Mall. The products were divided into cell phone similar to consignment sales and third-party seller models. However, it was different from a certain third party in his previous life. The warehousing and distribution of all goods were operated by Sahara Express, which had a nationwide network. Third-party sellers needed to package the goods and send them to the nearest Sahara Express warehouse. Of course, the third-party customer service and after-sales service were the responsibility of the third-party sellers. However, unlike the online shopping platform with the C2C model, Sahara Online Mall was still a B2C model. It avoided the chaos in C2C management and guaranteed the brand value of the third-party flagship store. Yang Yi believed that Sahara Online Mall could improve management efficiency and ensure the quality of the goods. Even if it inevitably lost some market share in the future competition, the original high-quality customer source would still not be lost. Back to the project of the 11/11 Shopping Carnival. In order to further widen the gap between them and their competitors, Sahara Online Mall drew its backbone and set up this project team. Half a year ago, it had been secretly preparing for November 11th. After the second round of financing received a large amount of funding from Landshaukai, the preparations for the November 11th shopping festival had been completed, whether it was the discount, the stock of goods, or the addition of servers to prevent traffic congestion on the internet. In late October, a large number of fake reviewers on the internet began to hype the concept of November 11th Singles Day. Among them, Yang Yi also ordered micro-broadcasting to fully cooperate. On November 1st, Sahara Online Mall also began a comprehensive publicity campaign. The overwhelming television and print advertisements, as well as the crazy discounts, completely stirred the heartstrings of people all over the country. In November, the most common topic between people was not "Have you eaten?" but "Do you know that the goods on Singles Day are sold very cheaply online?" This publicity campaign of 100 million yuan had successfully made Sahara Online Mall the center of attention of the entire country. Everyone was holding a bulging wallet and excitedly waiting for the arrival of the unlucky day of being single. Chapter 588. In fact, Soldier's Assault had already been completed. However, due to Chen Fengchen's influence, it was not broadcast in a hurry. Instead, it was scheduled for January of next year, becoming a spring drama on Central TV. Chen Fengchen was not idle either. In addition to promoting the show according to plan, he also set up the Drawing Sword crew without stopping to rest. He was preparing to shoot the new show. Although there was plenty of time for Yang Yi to produce the opening song or theme song for Soldier's Assault, unlike other songs, Yang Yi had delayed the opening song for too long. For the entire October, he was like a sponge, desperately absorbing knowledge from the old professors at the Jiangchuan Classical Music Academy. He did not write a single note. In November, he finally began to write. The main framework of the song was easy to write, but it was just a sloppy first draft. It was only a piano piece. Although it sounded decent, it was not enough to shock people. Even so, Yang Yi's homework had already shocked several professors in the composition department. Even though it was just a draft, it was not difficult to see that the overall musical framework was magnificent and majestic. It was not a random piece that a rookie student messed around with to cope with a learning task. For that, several professors who were good at different instruments personally brought Yang Yi to the instrument room. For example, the famous organist Professor Wu Dan and Professor Su Yi, who knew both the cello and the accordion. They personally came down to help Yang Yi with the audition, and helped him enrich the details of the song. You mentioned a vocal ensemble just now. You can consider using our school's choir, or I can help you contact our city's choir. They're one of the top choirs in the country, and they've even performed abroad. The deputy dean, Pang Budong, was shocked. He was very interested in the song Yang Yi was going to create. Of course, he was not trying to steal Yang Yi's creative rights. In this world, it was not that easy to steal someone's copyright. The most important thing was that from his professional perspective, Yang Yi's song would be an amazing masterpiece. Although it was still very rough, the framework alone was enough to make people feel that it was not simple. If Yang Yi composed an excellent or even classic piece of music in their school of classical music, the school of classical music would be proud of him. Even those who helped Yang Yi would leave a strong mark in history. Yang Yi, I can't wait to hear your finished song. When Yang Yi added the elements of the drum and other percussion instruments, Pang Budong, who was an expert in membrane instruments, could not help but sigh emotionally when he heard the prelude. Of course, Rome was not built in a day, and the song's effects could not be achieved in just a few days. Yang Yi to try and perfect. While Yang Yi went to study in the School of Classical Music, Murphy stayed in the coffee shop, reading, listening to music and resting in her and Yang Yi's exclusive booth. It was too boring to be alone at home. So Murphy came to the coffee shop to chat with Ding Xiang or Yang Huan. That afternoon, Yang Huan, who was sitting with Mo Fei for a while, suddenly had her phone ring. She picked it up and said to Mo Fei with a smile, "Sister, Gua de Bao is here. He brought you canned candies." Although they had asked Gua de Bao in the middle of last month, Gua de Bao's family still needed a few days to prepare the ingredients, make it, dry it and then send it by express delivery. After all, they were not using the Sahara Express. The canned fruit arrived at the end of last month, but Gua de Bao's identity was special, and he could not leave the military camp. He could only choose a day when there was no mission, and take half a day off to send the canned fruit. Yang Yi, the owner, was not here, so Murphy helped to welcome Gua de Bao. Maybe because there were classes on Monday, there were not many people in the coffee shop this afternoon. Murphy stood up with Yang Huan's help, and went to the door to welcome him. It was rare that Gua de Bao was not wearing his military uniform today. In casual clothes he looked burly, and his short bald head made him look like a bad guy. Fortunately, Gua de Bao's face was still quite simple and honest, and his eyes were also very simple, giving people the same feeling as Geng Sha. "Hello, Gua de Bao." Murphy shook hands with Gua de Bao and said gently, "Thank you for taking the trouble to send it here." It was the first time that Gua de Bao had seen Yang Yi's wife. Although he did not chase after celebrities and did not know much about Mo Fei's identity, just the identity of Yang Yi's wife still made him nervous. After he took back his hand, he rubbed his clothes embarrassedly and said, "It's not hard, not hard." "Hey, Gua de Bao, why are you so nervous? My sister-in-law won't eat you." Yang Huan raised her eyebrows and said with a smile, "Bring out the momentum that you used to beat me up." "That was just a misunderstanding. I didn't beat you up. I just caught the person who trespassed the military camp." Gua de Bao was even more embarrassed. Looking at his embarrassed look, he wanted to find a hole to hide in. "All right, Gua de Bao is an honest man. Huan Huan, don't tease him." Murphy could not help but laugh and said, "Ding Xiang, you and Huan Huan helped to move the things in. Gua de Bao, come in and take a seat." How could he let a girl do the hard work for him? Gua de Bao quickly blocked her with his body, and bent down to pick up the 2 boxes of canned food. He said, "It's okay. I can do it alone." After a while in the coffee shop, Ding Xiang poured a cup of coffee for Gua de Bao. He took a sip. De Bao was not used to drinking coffee and felt that it was a little bitter. Chapter 589. Guodabeo had only asked for an afternoon off, so after seeing Yang Yi, who had rushed back, he said goodbye and left. However, Guodabeo couldn't sleep the night he returned to the military camp. The next day, during combat training, Viper's captain, Old Lee, frowned as he watched for a while. He called Guodabeo over to spar with him. If it was any other day, the two Old Lees wouldn't be Guodabeo's opponent. But today, Guodabeo was a little distracted, and Old Lee found a flaw. He hooked Guodabeo and knocked him down. Then he twisted Guodabeo's arm, turned around, and pressed Guodabeo to the ground with a cross. Before the cross was formed, Guodabeo could still break free, but after the cross was formed, his elbows, wrists, and fingers were all controlled by the joints. No matter how strong Guodabeo was, Old Lee was still able to hold him down. "Hey Dabeo, this won't do." Old Lee smiled, let go of his hand and stood up. Guodabeo, who was a bit of a martial arts fanatic, paid more attention to this. After losing once, he came back to his senses. He gritted his teeth, jumped up like a carp, and punched his two fists together, saying, "Again." The two wrestled again, but this time, Guodabeo was serious, and Old Lee couldn't handle it. After a few blocks, Old Lee revealed an opening, which was caught by Guodabeo. Guodabeo turned around and went behind Old Lee, putting his arm around Old Lee's throat. Although Guodabeo looked strong, he was very agile, and Old Lee couldn't react in time. "Ehe. Captain, if you want to beat me, you'll need to train for a few more years," Guodabeo said excitedly. Old Lee patted Guodabeo's arm to make him let go, then panted and said, "Impossible, I can't beat you in this life. Damn, I'm bigger than you." Guodabeo chuckled and scratched his big bald head. The cold autumn wind blew on his head, sending a chill down his spine. They continued to train until everyone was tired and panting. When it was time to rest, Old Lee chatted with Guodabeo. "Dabeo, what's wrong? You just went out, and you look like you've fallen out of love?" Guodabeo was dumbfounded. He quickly waved his hand and said, "No. Come on, it's not like you can hide your thoughts. Who can't see that you're frowning?" Old Lee pointed at Guodabeo and said, "Give me a sip of water." Guodabeo handed it over. Old Lee took the water bottle and drank a mouthful of water. Only then did his dry throat feel a little better. "Let's talk. Tell me what happened. You, Guodabeo, actually have a time when you're troubled by love." Old Lee chuckled. Just now, when Guodabeo handed over the kettle, he didn't refute. Perhaps he didn't know what to say, but it could be said that he silently agreed with Old Lee's words. Guodabeo hesitated, but his heart was really uncomfortable. After holding it in for a while, he finally stuttered. "Captain, you say? I like a girl, but she has a boyfriend. What should I do?" Old Lee was dumbfounded. He didn't expect Guodabeo to encounter such a difficult problem when he was moved for the first time in his life. What can you do? You can only say that you're not fated to be together. Although Old Lee felt that saying this to Guodabeo was cruel, he still had to say it. "You can't rob her, right? If you're a bandit, I may support you, but you're a soldier of the People's Army. This is not right." "I know." Guodabeo lowered his head dejectedly and said in a low voice, "I just think she's very cute. She's also very cute when she fights. She's good at fighting." Guodabeo was narrating, but more importantly, he was venting his depression. Old Lee, however, caught a hint of something. He hurriedly shouted, "Wait." Old Lee frowned and looked at Guodabeo and said, "Dabeo, something's wrong. You asked for leave yesterday to deliver canned food to Yang Yi, right?" "Of course. This matter must be told to Old Lee. Where to go, what to do, as long as you ask for leave, you must clearly say it. And you said that the girl is good at fighting." Old Lee took a deep breath and thought of the farce last year. "Could it be that the girl you like is Yang Yi's sister, Yang? What's her name again?" Detective Conan's bright glasses seemed to have been broken in half. Guodabeo was dumbfounded, but he had no choice. He nodded and said hesitantly, "Her name is Yang Huan, but Captain, you can't tell anyone." On one hand, Guodabeo was afraid that his teammates would laugh at him. On the other hand, he didn't want to tear his sadness in front of the girl he liked. So he forced a smile in the coffee shop yesterday. She really is Yang Yi's sister." Old Lee felt his teeth hurt. He took a deep breath and said, "You really know how to choose your target. Can you beat Yang Yi? Even if I can beat him, I can't. I just can't beat him. Gua de Bao's lips moved, and he finally lowered his head in shame. I remember that Yang Yi's sister is quite young, right? She's at most 19 or 20 years old. I heard that she's going to university? Old Li asked. She got into university this year, and she's in Jiangchuan now. Gua de Bao said softly. I met her last time when they were here for military training. It was also this meeting that woke up his confused heart. Although you're a little older, maybe 5 or 6 years older than her, it shouldn't be a problem. Old Li muttered to himself. Hey, wait, I want to ask you. How did you know that she has a boyfriend? Did you confess to her? Gua de Bao was stunned for a moment, then he quickly waved his hand and said, No. Then what's going on? Old Li frowned and asked. He remembered that when he went out yesterday, Gua de Bao was still fine, or rather, he was quite happy. I didn't dare to ask, but I felt that it should be a problem. Gua de Bao lowered his head and told Old Li his thoughts. First of all, when they first met, Yang Huan was brought to the military camp by Gua Zi. At that time, Gua de Bao wasn't interested in Yang Huan, so he didn't think much about it. But now that he thought about it, if there wasn't a problem, why would Yang Huan come out with Gua Zi? This was actually the second reason Gua de Bao thought about it, and it made him feel that he had no hope. Secondly, Gua de Bao found that yesterday, Yang Huan asked Gua Zi to bring canned food back to eat. And then Gua Zi and Yang Huan seemed to be familiar with each other. He paid too much attention to Yang Huan. At that time, Gua de Bao's heartstrings were in a mess. Was she with Gua Zi? After hearing him, Old Li's furrowed brows didn't loosen, and he asked tentatively, You haven't confirmed it with Yang Huan, so how can you be sure that they're a couple? Perhaps it's just a misunderstanding? Gua de Bao looked at Old Li blankly. Gua de Bao, who had never been in a relationship, was slow to react to these questions. They're just friends, you can't say for sure. Before you really want to give up, you should at least ask her and confirm it with her. Old Li's words rekindled a little hope in Gua de Bao's eyes. However, Old Li still didn't want Gua de Bao to get hurt, so he couldn't help but tell him a cruel reality. De Bao, you have to understand that there's a big difference between our status and theirs. You're a professional soldier, and you have to go through complicated and boring training every day. You almost don't have any holidays in Viper, and you have to go out on missions occasionally, and your life is in danger. As for Yang Yi's sister, you said it yourself, she's a university student. A university student's life is rich and colorful. She'll meet many young people of her age, some with good grades and some with good looks. Other than studying, she can also play to her heart's content. You and she can be said to be people from two different worlds, living a different life, and developing in different directions in the future. Old Li gritted his teeth and looked at Gua de Bao, who was in a daze, and said, It's not that Captain doesn't want you to pursue your happiness. If you've made up your mind, go after her. If you succeed, we'll cheer for you. It's just that, do you really have such determination? Gua de Bao was silent. Chapter 590. The world of adults was still very complicated. In the world of children, there were not so many complicated relationships and thoughts. They would be happy for a simple thing for half a day. For example, today, after Lu Weishao arrived at the kindergarten, she happily told Xixi and the others that her mother had finally come to China. Lunch, delicious food. Mommy will cook delicious food. Share it. Lu Weishao grinned and gestured to her friends. Lu Weishao's Chinese had improved a lot. Of course, a lot of it was learned from Xixi and Lan Xian, so some of the words she used were very similar to Xixi and the others. There's delicious food. What's delicious? What are they? Lan Xian was the most excited. Her mouth was like a machine gun as she asked quickly. Lu Weishao was confused for a while, and asked Lan Xian to repeat it again before she understood. I don't know. Chinese. How do you say it? Lu Weishao mumbled for a while before she said the name of the food in Swedish. Falukorv, a type of sausage. A series of words, obviously, no one could understand. Lan Xian did not know why, but just listening to it made her drool. She could not help but turn to Xixi, who could speak a little Swedish, and asked, Xixi, What is Lu Weisha saying? She blinked her big eyes, also full of confusion. She shook her head and whispered, I don't know. Aya, her father did not teach her so many complicated words, but she had already decided to go back and ask her father. In her opinion, her father knew everything. I'm sorry, I don't know. Chinese, how do you say it? Lu Weisha lowered her head in shame to her friends. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we know there's delicious food. Chen Shuryan said casually. We'll just take a look later. That's true. The little ones all laughed happily. Lan Xian was the most excited. She felt that she was going to eat to her heart's content again today, so she hugged Shishi and jumped around. In fact, Shishi wasn't particularly excited, but she was infected by Lan Xian. The little girl was so happy that her eyebrows were raised in a smile. She grabbed Lan Xian's shoulder and jumped while giggling. Xian, you're jumping too fast. I'm afraid you'll step on my feet. The two girls jumped and spun, almost falling down. Wang Shijuan walked past them with a few boys. They were chatting away, but when they looked up, they saw Shishi's smiling face. That pair of big eyes was smiling, sparkling like the sparkling autumn water, and seemed to be able to speak. Her face, which still had a little baby fat and delicate facial features, was like a beautiful painting left behind by God. The way the little girl stumbled and supported Lan Xian as she cried, Ayaya! She constantly exuded a cute and approachable charm. However, when they saw Sisi, Wang Shijuan and the others couldn't help but recall the fear of being dominated by this seemingly weak and delicate little girl on that sunny and beautiful morning. What was worse was that the little girl beat you up, pushed you down, and even cried at the side. It made you feel like you were in pain, or that someone else was wronged. This unbelievable reaction made Wang Shijuan and the others feel deeply conflicted about Shishi. Now that they saw Shishi, they trembled and decided to take a detour. Shishi didn't think much of it. She even felt a little embarrassed, thinking that she and Lan Xian had affected others. She blushed, raised her hand and said, Wang Shijuan, I'm sorry. However, the little girl was puzzled to see that as soon as she opened her mouth, the group of boys, who didn't know who took the lead, hurriedly ran past her with a wah. Of course, Shishi didn't think she did anything wrong. She just felt strange, puzzled, and curious as she looked at their backs, thinking that they had discovered something important. Don't play with boys. Chen Shuryan snorted and said, They're very bad. I don't like them either. Lan Xian nodded and said with certainty. But I'm also a boy. Nanjiayu said weakly. The little boy looked distressed, feeling that this world was a bit difficult to survive in. The boys didn't like him, and his friends didn't want to play with boys. Chen Shuryan was stunned for a moment, then she said, It's not that we don't like you, Xiaoyu. It's just them. It's because they bullied Xiaoyu and Lu Weisha. Lan Xian clearly distinguished between kindness and hatred, pointing at Wang Shijuan and the others. After the boys ran past, they laughed, chased, and played, as if they had already forgotten what had just happened. This was just a small episode. After Teacher Kai took the children to learn how to identify numbers for a lesson, it was finally noon, the time that the children looked forward to the most for lunch. Under the influence of Lu Weisha, the children all lined up neatly. Although they didn't line up according to height and looked a bit uneven, the straight line, and the other children who volunteered to line up with them, still made the teachers of the other classes in the cafeteria praise them. Teacher Mu, the students in your class are really obedient. Teacher Lin, who was helping Teacher Mu to distribute plates to the children, said enviously, When it's our class turn later, they'll definitely swarm up like bees. The power of an example. They weren't so obedient in the past, but Lu Weisha set a good example. Then Yangshi, Yang Luoqi, and the others also lined up. With a leader, the other children were too embarrassed to cut the line and learn to line up. Although Teacher Mu didn't show it, the corners of her mouth curled up, revealing a trace of pride. It just so happened that it was Shishi's turn. The little girl held a plate from Teacher Lin and came over to take the 2 lunch boxes that Teacher Mu handed over. The lunch boxes were still warm because the cafeteria would steam the food together with the lunch boxes for the children. It was still a little hot when it was just taken out. This was also one of the reasons why they had to be carried on plates. Hearing Teacher Mu mention her name, Shishi raised her little head in confusion. It's okay. Teacher Lin is praising you. She said that you were very obedient when you lined up to get your food. Teacher Mu said to Shishi with a smile. She didn't forget to remind her. Be careful when you take it. You have 2 lunch boxes. Shishi was praised. She immediately smiled and nodded her little head. It was a little awkward and strenuous for a girl of her age to carry a plate, but at this moment, her footsteps were much lighter. The main character of today's lunch was no longer the delicacies brought by Shishi. Even Shishi was looking at Lu Weisha's lunchbox eagerly. It was a typical Western meal. Even though it was mixed together in the lunchbox, each ingredient was actually separated and made into a separate dish. There were red sausages, reddish-brown slices of reindeer meat that were the same as steak, small round pieces of potatoes, and some vegetable salad. It looked quite tempting. However, the other dishes were not that attractive. After all, they did not look, smell, and taste good. They were a little different from the dishes brought by Shishi. However, the slices of reindeer meat were large pieces of meat with rich sauce. They looked very delicious. Shishi, Lan Xian, and the other children who were watching suddenly swallowed their saliva. I'll give it to you. I'll eat Shishi's food. Lu Weisha generously pushed out her lunchbox. She took the lid and put in some of the dishes that Shishi shared with everyone. How could the children be polite? They couldn't wait to pick up the food. Fortunately, there were more slices of reindeer meat. There were 6 pieces. After Shishi, Lan Xian, Chen Shiyin, Yang Luoqi, and Nan Zhaoyu each took a piece, there was still 1 piece left. The marinated reindeer meat tasted very good. Although it was not fried and eaten immediately, the chewy reindeer meat was a little chewy. After biting into it, one could feel the rich fragrance exploding in the mouth. The delicious taste slid down the tip of the tongue along the meat juice. It was simply an incomparable enjoyment. However, there was still 1 piece left. Who was going to eat it? The children looked at it eagerly. Shishi also wanted to eat it. She was like Lan Xian. Before she finished eating the piece of meat on her chopsticks, she couldn't help but secretly glance at the piece of meat under her. Lu Weisha hasn't eaten yet. This piece of meat is Lu Weisha's. In the end, Cici reluctantly moved her gaze away from the reindeer meat slices and said to her little friends, "Ah." Lan Xian called out regretfully. However, she didn't throw a tantrum. She just looked at the piece of meat reluctantly. Lu Weisha didn't say anything and put it in her bowl. My mom will still tomorrow. Lu Weisha saw that her friends liked her mother's food and happily said that she would bring the meat over tomorrow. When she said this, Lu Weisha actually felt a little regretful. She didn't know how to express it to her friends. She could only think, if only the herring could be brought over. It's also very delicious. Chapter 591. Justice may be late, but it will never be absent. A few days later, under the warm light of the coffee shop on the corner, Yang Yi raised his coffee cup and opened with this sentence, which had a strong taste of chicken soup but was useless. He smiled and said to the friends who gathered for Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan, "Guys, let's congratulate Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan of Thousand Miles Chuanshu. Congratulations on finally getting rid of the rogue contract and ushering in freedom." After Yang Yi's voice fell, everyone including Huiyang, Mo Xiaowan, Xiao Ai, Jining Ming and Murphy Yang Huan, Ding Xiang Guozi Yuanlei and others who cared about Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan during this process, all smiled and raised their cups to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan and cheered. Even Shishi swayed in such a happy atmosphere, as if it was the spring festival, and happily imitated the adults to raise their cups. Amidst everyone's cheers, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were excited and looked at everyone with gratitude. They held their cups and moved their lips, but did not know what to say. It was as if there were thousands of words, but they had long forgotten to say them. Yes, that's right, Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan finally won the lawsuit and completed the termination of their contract with Ronghuada. On the last day of October, Xiangnan announced the results of Tang Rong's investigation. Tang Rong, who had controlled the Xiangnan Television Bureau for more than 10 years, was finally relieved of all his duties and arrested for corruption, bribery. Using his power to open the door for others, and other reasons. Without Tang Ronghua, who used to flaunt his prowess in Xiangnan, naturally lost his original halo. Not only did the slightly capable agents under him leave one after another, but more and more crimes were revealed by his former competitors. It was worth mentioning that Yang Yi saw that Tang Kaitai was stubborn in school, but in fact he just came to pack up his things. After going back, he was going to take Tang Rong's embezzled money abroad under the arrangement of his family. As long as he escaped abroad, no one could do anything to him. However, justice grinds slowly but surely. Tang Kaitai was stopped at the customs because the previous exposure of Zhuozi had not been completely verified. All of his exit activities were restricted. Looking at the current situation, it was only a matter of time before Tang Kaitai went to jail. Back to Ronghua Management Company. Without Tang Rong's support and Guozi's relationship, Hu Yang's lawsuit was finally heard by the court in Jiangcheng. This time, the efficiency was very high. With the support of conclusive evidence, Lu Xiaoshu and the others were finally allowed to touch the contract with Ronghua Management Company. In fact, at this time, Ronghua's agency couldn't care less about Qianli Chuanshu, who had no experience and no reputation. The other important artists' requests to terminate their contracts, as well as the government's investigation, were what made them anxious. No matter what, after a year, more than a year, the grudges between Lu Xiaoshu, Miao Chuan, and Ronghua had finally come to an end. Of course, such good news was worthy of everyone's celebration. Thank you everyone, thank you. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan raised their cups and said excitedly. But this kind of gratitude wasn't enough, so they decided to thank them one by one. Thank you, Brother Yang Yi. If it weren't for your support, we might have already given up on our music dreams. Lu Xiaoshu walked towards Yang Yi first, his eyes glistening with tears. Miao Chuan, who was beside him, also nodded vigorously. Yes, we really have to thank you, Brother Yang. No matter what we did, in the end, it was still you who persevered. You didn't forget your dreams and stood your ground. Yang Yi smiled and patted them on the shoulder. He encouraged them and said, continue to work hard in the future and create more music. Lu Xiaoshu nodded vigorously. Although it wasn't appropriate to say it now, Lu Xiaoshu and the others had already made up their minds. In the next few years, if they earned money, they must return it to Yang Yi, because they had been fighting the lawsuit for more than half a year. Yang Yi was also on Hu Yang's side, helping Lu Xiaoshu and the others pay all their lawyer fees. Yang Yi probably couldn't remember this number clearly, but Lu Xiaoshu and the others had specially asked Hu Yang, so they clearly remembered it in their hearts. Brother Hu Yang, thank you for accompanying us all the time. Lu Xiaoshu and the others walked towards Hu Yang. Haha, don't thank me. I'm just fulfilling my duty. Besides, I'm very glad that this lawsuit didn't ruin my reputation. Hu Yang smiled and said, if you really want to thank someone, you should thank Yang Yi. It's about me again. Yang Yi shook his head with a smile and said, Ashu Chuan, if you two are free later, give Lin Muan a call. Although he's settled in Harbor City now, he's still very concerned about your situation. Of course, we'll definitely call. Brother Lin even used his own future to speak for us. Lu Xiaoshu said excitedly. After thanking everyone, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan came to Yang Yi's side again, but this time they were facing Murphy and Shishi. Murphy was in a good mood. She covered her mouth and laughed. You two don't have to thank me, I really couldn't help at all. Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan didn't appear to be as nervous and overwhelmed as they were at the beginning. At this time, Lu Xiaoshu scratched his head and said embarrassedly, Brother Yang helped us pay so much legal fees. It must be because sister-in-law Murphy is magnanimous and gave the green light, so we feel that we should also thank you. Murphy was stunned for a moment, and then laughed with the others who heard this. Ashu, you really know how to find excuses. There are so many people, and the excuses are not repeated. Well, although I never care about the money at home, since you thank me like this, I will reluctantly accept it. Mo Fei said with a smile, and then she used the naughty tone that Yang Yijing often used. Shishi was eating the cake, and she didn't notice that there was a bit of cream on her face. However, she seemed to have felt something, and she raised her little head in confusion. She looked at Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan with her big eyes. I want to see how you are going to thank Shishi, Murphy said with a smile. The little girl was a little confused. Thank? What thank? However, Murphy and the others who were watching the show were going to be disappointed. Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan really wanted to thank Shishi, and it wasn't the kind of reason to thank Murphy. Lu Xiaoshu said to Shishi very seriously, Shishi, do you still remember that last summer, Uncle Ah Chuan and I came to your father's place for the first time? And then we sang a song for you? Shishi nodded her little head in confusion. Although she didn't understand what they meant, Shishi said clearly, it was Papa who asked you to sing. Yes. At that time, Ah Chuan and I participated in a commercial performance, and we made some money. We were going to buy coffee to celebrate, but we didn't know that the coffee in this shop was so expensive. Lu Xiaoshu recalled and said, Brother Yang said that we could sing a song in exchange for these 2 cups of coffee. This was a past that no one knew, and people like Ding Xiang couldn't help but come over to listen. Mao Chuan couldn't help but interrupt. Brother Yang knew that we didn't have much money, so he wanted to treat us to coffee. Don't say that. Your song also proved your value, Yang Yi said with a smile. At that time, we were very happy, so we sang, I Miss Her in the Northern Winter, that we wrote ourselves. At that time, we didn't know that Brother Yang was such a great songwriter, and we were just showing off in front of an expert. And Brother Yang also gave us some guidance, so we could arrange this song better. Lu Xiaoshu said. At first, we didn't think much of it, but later we found that Brother Yang's guidance was very right, Mao Chuan added. So there was such a story. But, what did this have to do with Shishi? The little girl was looking at the 2 uncles in a daze, listening attentively, not knowing if she could understand. I just gave you some advice. The reason why you wrote this song well is also because of your own efforts. It's also because you really love music, so you have been persisting in making good music, and constantly modifying it. That's why you have this masterpiece now. Yang Yi waved his hand. Hearing Yang Yi say this, Murphy couldn't help but look at the flute and arrow on the side, which were specially borrowed by Yang Yi from China's National Instruments Department to accompany a new song that he was going to sing for Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan today. However, Murphy had only heard Yang Yi sing a cappella, and had never heard the accompaniment of these 2 instruments. The song was very nice, but what would the accompaniment of these 2 traditional instruments be like? Moreover, although Murphy knew that Yang Yi knew these 2 instruments, and had even used a simulator to make some accompaniment passages in the studio, Murphy had never seen Yang Yi play these 2 instruments. On this side, Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan continued seriously. The main reason for saying this is that, after we finished singing, Shishi was beside Brother Yang, and she said to us, Mao Chuan said with certainty, I remember very clearly that the little girl, that is Shishi, said, You guys sang very well. Shishi was a little surprised, and when Murphy smiled and rubbed the little girl's head, she said in a daze, But I don't remember. Yang Yi remembered and knew that Mao Chuan was telling the truth, so he smiled and said, You can even remember this. Of course. Because we know that children won't lie. Shishi is so innocent and cute, she won't lie. Lu Xiaoshu said excitedly. If you lie, you won't be a good child. Shishi agreed with this sentence and said with a smile. Yes, Shishi's recognition has given us a lot of strength, and let us truly understand that our music is very infectious. Lu Xiaoshu said with emotion. So we must persevere. Thank you, Shishi. Mao Chuan even bowed to Shishi solemnly. Hee hee, you guys are making me feel embarrassed. The little girl was actually quite happy, but under everyone's applause and laughter, she was still bashful and hid behind her father's butt, sticking out her little head and giggling. Chapter 592. Everyone sat down and chatted again. Yang Yi gently put his hand on Shishi's little shoulder, looked at Lu Xiaoshu and Mao Chuan, and asked with a smile, What are you 2 going to do in the future? Find a management company and continue to release albums? Mao Chuan and I are already in our 3rd year, and we can get our diplomas in a year and a half. Lu Xiaoshu said to Yang Yi. At that time, we gave up our studies and wanted to make a name for ourselves in the entertainment circle. Now that we think about it, we were indeed a little too hasty. Maybe we should finish our studies first, and then come out to make a name for ourselves. In fact, we don't have to wait until a year and a half. We are busy in the second semester of our third year, and we need to prepare our graduation thesis in the first semester of our fourth year. But there is nothing else to do in the second semester of our fourth year. And we also have to think about our own position. Mao Chuan echoed from the side. His eyes were shining with excitement, perhaps because he had drunk too much coffee. We want to be like you, Brother Yang. We want to be a singer-songwriter group, write our own songs and sing our own songs. It seemed that Rong Huada had promised to help them write songs and release albums, but in the end, he went back on his word, which left them with some psychological trauma. But this idea was not bad. It was better to rely on oneself than on others. What's more, they did have some creative talent. When Yang Yi just nodded and was about to praise their self-awareness, Lu Xiaoshu quickly added, "But no matter whether we want to come out after graduation or not, Brother Yang, please rest assured that we won't go anywhere. We will sign with your Huai Brothers Management Company." Ah! Yang Yi was stunned. This statement was not right. What did he mean by rest assured? Yang Yi frowned and said, "That's not what I meant. I didn't ask about your plans because I want you to sign with our company. Also, I didn't help you get out of the quagmire because I want you to repay me." "But we want to repay your kindness," Lu Xiaoshu said sincerely. Miao Chuan also nodded. "If you want to repay my kindness, then I don't want it." Yang Yi waved his hand proudly and said, "I helped you because I felt that it was not easy for you to pursue your dreams. If I want you to repay me, I would feel guilty." Lu Xiaoshu was also a smart man. He looked at Miao Chuan and said, "Let's not talk about this for now. Anyway, we are not in a hurry to sign with an agency." "That's right. You still have more than half a year. Look carefully, you will definitely find someone suitable for you," Yang Yi said with a smile. "But we feel that Brother Hua Yi is the most suitable for us. The other companies are too much of a bully." Miao Chuan hesitated and said. Yang Yi was silent for a moment. Then he waved his hand and said, "Now that you've just escaped from the abyss of suffering, all you can think about is how I can help you. That's why you haven't considered things thoroughly. In half a year, you should give yourself a chance to buffer. Think about it carefully and understand more. If you still want to come to Brother Hua Yi after half a year, I won't turn you away from such a fake agency that basically has no resources and can only rely on yourself to fight for and create." Yang Yi was right. Brother Hua Yi really had no resources. Unlike some old agencies, they had connections with many songwriters, directors, and program groups. Without these relationships, it meant that they lacked exposure, so it was not a good starting point for a newcomer to debut. This was also why he would rather send Lin Mu and to Harbor City than keep him. Of course, Yang Yi could use a lot of songs to make Lin Muan famous, but what was the point of such a strong star for Yang Yi? Moreover, he didn't want these friends to have a sense of dependence on him. Dreams had to be pursued by themselves. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked at each other again. Then they nodded gratefully to Yang Yi and said, "We know that you are doing this for our own good. We will seriously consider it." "It's good that you understand." Yang Yi smiled and said, "By the way, don't you want to learn how to compose by yourself? Old Jean, come here. I'll introduce you to two apprentices." Yang Yi called Jining Ming over and introduced him to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan. Old Jean, teacher Jining Ming, is the music director of Brother Hua Yi and Phoebe Studio. He is also a senior music producer in the industry. His ability to arrange music is absolutely at the top level in the industry. Jining Ming quickly waved his hand and said with a smile, "Boss, you flatter me. In front of you, how can my arrangement be shown? Don't compare with me. I'm more special." Yang Yi smiled and said, "But let's be honest. Teacher Jean has been honed for many years. He can arrange music in a myriad of styles, and they are all very well suited to the market's appetite. This is what I admire about him." Yang Yi put his arm around Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan's shoulders and patted them. He said to Jining Ming, "These two little brothers want to walk the path of a singer-songwriter, but their arrangement level is not enough. Purely guitar arrangement seems very weak, so I want them to learn from you. It just so happens that they still have half a year to go before they graduate." Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already pleasantly surprised. They didn't expect Yang Yi to continue to help them so selflessly. They didn't know how to express the excitement and gratitude in their hearts. Of course, this is no problem. Jin Yingming nodded. What about you? Yang Yi asked with a smile. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan quickly nodded. Lu Xiaoshu said gratefully, "Thank you, Brother Yang. We will definitely learn well. Teacher Jin, sorry to trouble you. Learn from each other. I also look forward to seeing your growth." Jin Yingming patted their shoulders and said, "The company is in Tingshan district, not far from the school. I usually work there. If you have free time after school, you can come and find me." While they were chatting, the others were very lively and playing. They were all multi-talented people, so performing a few performances was naturally not a problem. Especially Guizi, he even sat in front of the piano in high spirits and played a piano piece coquettishly. After Guizi finished his performance, he felt that it wasn't enough, so he waved to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan and shouted, "Don't forget our main characters. Ashu, Chuan, now that the two of you are not restricted by the contract, quickly come and sing your song. We haven't heard you sing. I miss her in the northern winter for a long time." The previous contract didn't allow Qianli Chuanshu to perform in public without permission. Yang Yi also smiled and clapped his hands. He said, "That's right. I've been waiting for your performance for a year." Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan looked at each other, stood up happily, and walked to the middle of the crowd. Although they didn't bring a guitar, Yang Yi's guitar was also taken to the villa by him. But it didn't matter, because this song could also be played with the piano. In the long-lost time before, the two of them not only wrote songs, but also made different arrangements for this song. Miao Chuan was responsible for playing the piano, and Lu Xiaoshu was responsible for singing. I'm lost in the northern winter, wandering in the boundless wilderness, watching a few groups of geese fly away, thinking of her. It was still the same voice that was as clear and clean as the northern sky, but compared to the beginning, the emotions contained in this voice had a bit more vicissitudes of life, which also gave the song a more mature charm. The face that can't come back. Miao Chuan's voice could still perfectly match Lu Xiaoshu, and the two of them cooperated naturally. Everyone listened very attentively, even she was in her father's arms. Along with the song, she held her father's hand and gently shook it. Her bright big eyes seemed to be able to feel the meaning of the lyrics, and showed sadness. Don't ask me when I can cross the mountains and rivers, cross the grassland, and come to your side, because that is today. Lu Xiaoshu ended the song reluctantly. Everyone also wanted to continue, and after a while, they clapped their hands. Thank you. Actually, we still have a few new songs that we wrote during this period of time. But because of emotional instability, there are some flaws in the writing, so we're embarrassed to take them out. When we're done, we'll definitely sing them for everyone. Lu Xiaoshu said shyly. Why are you two exactly the same as Yang Yi? Always thinking of waiting for the finished product to come out? Murphy couldn't help but laugh. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan scratched their heads embarrassedly. I'm just joking. The pursuit of perfection is a good thing. Murphy felt that what she said just now was a bit awkward, so she quickly added on. What she said just now wasn't awkward, but what she said now was a bit awkward. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with what she said, but everyone felt that they didn't know how to continue. Yang Yi helped to resolve the situation. The pursuit of perfection is because their attitude towards music is very sincere. This is also why they can persist until now. Didn't you write a song to sing for them? Murphy felt that she was too stupid, and her brain wasn't enough to understand. She could only change the topic and say the words that she had been holding back all night. I've been waiting for a long time. Boss, you have a new song again. Jin Yingming asked in surprise. Brother Yang, quickly sing it. Guizi was also very excited. It was so sudden that Yang Yi had to pull Shishi away, stand up, and smile. Actually, it's like this. 1,000 Miles Chuanshu was able to get rid of Rong Huada and regain his freedom. We're all happy for you. At the same time, this matter also gave me some inspiration, so I wrote a song. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan quickly moved away from the piano. I don't need the piano, I brought these. Yang Yi took the flute and eru from the side and smiled. This song is actually a bit special. I don't know if you'll like it. How is that possible? We'll definitely like it. Miao Chuan was like a little fan of Yang Yi. He excitedly helped Yang Yi move a chair, and even got a soft cushion for Yang Yi to place the arrow on. Chapter 593. Since Yang Yi was going to sing a new song, everyone gathered around and stopped talking about it. The cafe, which was warmer than the north wind outside, quieted down. It was as if it was the 12th lunar month of winter, and the outside was covered in snow, while the fireplace inside the house was burning brightly with firewood. Everyone was comfortably huddled together to keep warm, and the warmth was just right. Yang Yi put down the arrow and picked up the flute. Seeing Yang Yi's two musical instruments, Yang Huan, Ding Xiang, Guazi, and the other family members and friends who knew Yang Yi but didn't know him as well as Mo Fei, were all surprised. He can also play arrow? Murphy and Jean Yingming were not surprised. Jean Yingming even had a strong interest in it. Using the flute and the arrow, which were relatively unconventional instruments, the arrangement of this song must be very interesting. Without further ado, Yang Yi held the flute horizontally and put his hands gently on the holes. His mouth was facing the holes. He just took a deep breath and played the prelude. Note 1. After 2 short changes of tone, Yang Yi played a long ending note. With his long breath, the melodious sound of the flute became soft and gentle. The changes of tone were also done in one breath. There was only one invisible breath in between. However, when the sound of the flute rang out, the sorrowful tone could not help but resonate with it. The slightly trembling sound of the flute also caused people's hearts to tremble. Although it was their first time hearing it, everyone present could not help but have goosebumps all over their bodies. It was so beautiful. The melancholy was just right, and the sound of the flute was faint. It was as if a young girl was pouring her heart out, making people reminisce endlessly. Many people who knew music, especially Murphy and Jean Yingming, who were obsessed with music, could not help but close their eyes and carefully feel the melody. She nestled between her mother's legs. She could not sit still, but at this moment, she did not run around. Instead, she stayed where she was, holding her mother's leg and looking at her father who was playing the flute in surprise. She did not have time to feel proud of her father. The little girl's big eyes seemed to be reflecting the beautiful bamboo flute's shadow. It seemed that she was also surprised. How could this thing play such a beautiful sound? This was the little girl's first time listening to the flute. After 2 preludes, Yang Yi put down the flute, picked up the arrow, and sat on a chair. Although there was a pause, this was an exchange between friends, so there was no need to be so calculative. He pulled the bow, and the ponytail brushed the strings of the arrow. The rich and full music with continuous glissando brought out a slightly sad melody. At the same time, Yang Yi opened his mouth. True love is as vast as the grassland, the layers of wind and rain can't block it. As if singing a poem, Yang Yi had a gentle smile on his face as he sang softly. However, although his voice was not loud, each word had his unique magnetism. Yang Yi's singing style was not like Fei Yu's. It did not have the unique tenderness of looking at the sky. Instead, it was more like Huang Bo's singing style. Using some grassland singer's singing style, using the spirit of a man to interpret a different kind of tenderness. There will be a time when the clouds open and the sun rises. The sunlight will shine on you and me. If the first line of the lyrics made everyone unable to understand the meaning of Yang Yi's words, the second line of the lyrics made everyone suddenly understand. What Yang Yi wanted to express was not praising the escape of the 1,000 miles Chuanshu at this time. They had experienced depression and setbacks, just like layers of dense wind and rain, making people feel despair. But do not be afraid, because behind the darkness, there will be light. They will eventually see the moon, the clouds open and the sun rises. Success or the joy of victory will shine on you and me like the sun. True love is like the blooming of plum blossoms. The cold ice and snow cannot drown it. Blooming on the coldest branch, I see the spring coming to you and me. Yang Yi continued singing under the accompaniment of the arrow. The true love here was no longer the feelings of the original song, nor was it the true love between lovers. Instead, it used a common metaphor in ancient poetry, In ancient poetry, it was common to see poets who could not directly express their political ambitions, and could only use other stories to express it indirectly. For example, Wang Engshi's Climbing the Flying Peak, Flying the Flying Peak Thousand-Seeker Pagoda. I heard the rooster crowing to see the sun rise. Not afraid of the clouds covering my eyes. I was born at the highest level. It was using the story of climbing the mountain to express one's determination and courage to not fear evil. It was the same here. Although the original A Cut of Plum Blossoms sang about love, the pursuit of free love, and one's own steadfastness. However, it was not impossible to use it to express Yang Yi's admiration for the 1,000 miles Chuanshu and the rest who persisted in their dreams and finally obtained freedom. Yang Yi's singing paused slightly, and the melody of the era seemed to slow down, as if it was brewing for an explosion. That's right, the melody rose once again, and Yang Yi's firm and powerful voice rang out. The snowflakes fluttered, the northern wind blew. The world was a vast expanse. This artistic conception was too beautiful. Even though Murphy had heard Yang Yi sing before, she could not help but feel a little excited. It was as if it was winter in the north, the sky was filled with snow, and the sun and moon could not be seen. It was just a vast expanse. A cut of plum blossoms stood proudly in the snow, only for the fragrance of my lover. Similarly, the lyrics gave people a wonderful artistic conception, as if they could really see a plum blossoms blooming in the world of white snow. Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already intoxicated by the lyrics, especially Miao Chuan. He was in charge of writing the lyrics, and he also liked to write poems and lyrics, so he could understand that this plum blossoms was used to express its emotions. The plum blossoms were the most resistant to cold, and they bloomed in the harsh snowy weather. Wasn't it just like how they had experienced the setbacks of losing the lawsuit and the pain of being frozen, but their dreams had not fallen, and were still standing proudly? Miao Chuan clenched his fist, and his face was filled with excitement. He looked at Yang Yi with admiration. He loved this song too much. He really wanted to know how Yang Yi wrote it. The lyrics were beautiful, and so was the melody. Love what I love, no regrets. This love will stay in my heart forever. Finally, Yang Yi sang the last verse for the second time, and slowly ended the song. The ending lyrics seemed to be a message Yang Yi had sent to Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan. Love what I love, no regrets. Courageously pursue your dreams. After listening to this song, everyone's feelings might not be very deep, but when they smiled and praised Yang Yi's new style, they looked back and were surprised to find that Lu Xiaoshu and Miao Chuan were already in tears. Thank you, Brother Yang, thank you for the encouragement you gave us with this song. After being discovered, Lu Xiaoshu embarrassedly wiped his tears and laughed with a nasal voice. It really brought up all kinds of grievances in the past year, so I lost my composure. Oh, okay. It's all in the past. Jin Yingming patted their shoulders and comforted them. Jin Yingming also had a lot of feelings. He had also experienced the lowest point of his life, a very, very deep valley, but he also persevered to walk out of it. Of course, Jin Yingming was not as excited as Lu Xiaoshu, because he was not young anymore, and those feelings were hidden in his heart. Still the same words. Let us continue to work hard for our dreams. Believe in yourself. There will be a day when the clouds will open and the sun will see the light. Yang Yi raised the coffee cup in his hand, smiled, and made the final toast. Chapter 594. In the middle of the night, Murphy suddenly had a stomachache, probably because she was too happy to listen to Yang Yi's singing at night. Dear dear. Yang Yi's ears were still very sensitive. Even though he was asleep, the sound of Murphy crying out in pain at night still made Yang Yi open his eyes immediately even though they were separated by a wall. Just like how he reacted to danger in his previous life, Yang Yi quickly got up after opening his eyes. Yang Yi covered the sleeping Shishi with a blanket behind him with one hand. However, he did not bother to put on his shoes. Without looking back, he directly jumped up from the bed and hurriedly ran to the next room barefooted. His stomach was getting bigger and bigger. For safety reasons, Murphy slept on a separate bed while Yang Yi ran between the two rooms to take care of both of them. What's wrong? Yang Yi asked anxiously when he turned on the light, and saw that Murphy's forehead was covered with sweat. He did not know whether it was because of nervousness or because of the pain that made her face pale. I don't know. My stomach hurts a little. It's intermittent. It might be contractions. Ouch, it hurts again. Murphy was in pain again. She held her stomach and frowned. Even though Yang Yi hurriedly came over to help her up, Murphy could not help but arch her body slightly. Is she about to give birth? Yang Yi asked in surprise. He had no experience in this at all. He could only make some judgments based on Murphy's words. According to the book, contractions were a sign of labor. I don't want to. It's too early. It's not time yet. Murphy shook her head and said with some fear. Murphy had never encountered such a situation before. When she gave birth to Shishi, it was very smooth. Moreover, it was a natural birth. However, Earbook had only been pregnant for 9 months. If she gave birth now, Earbook would be a premature baby. Premature babies would suffer from a lot of illnesses and sequelae. They might even die prematurely. Murphy didn't dare to think about it any further. Her eyes were filled with tears as she tightly held on to Yang Yi's hand. Although the pain had passed and wasn't too painful for the time being, she still bit her lips, afraid that she would choke out a sob. Don't worry, it's definitely fine. Maybe it's just a stomachache. Yang Yi was actually very flustered when he saw Murphy's appearance, but he still wouldn't show it. He tried his best to remain calm and use his firm expression to give Murphy strength. Really? Murphy asked sadly. Really? No matter what, let's go to the hospital first and let the doctor take a look. Yang Yi supported Murphy with his strong arm and got off the bed first. Wait a minute, I'll pack some clothes. Actually, he didn't prepare anything and didn't know what to pack. Yang Yi hurriedly stuffed some Murphy's clothes, a warm blanket that might be useful, and some scattered water bottles and other things into a luggage bag. If it were any other time, Yang Yi would carefully fold the clothes and put them neatly in the luggage bag to make full use of the space. However, at this time he couldn't care so much and stuffed whatever he saw into the bag. Shishi, we can't leave Shishi alone at home. Murphy looked at Yang Yi, who was busy for her, and felt warm in her heart. She calmed down a little and thought of her daughter who was still in the room next door. It's okay, I'll bring her along too. Yang Yi went to the room next door, took a small blanket, and carried Shishi to the room next door. However, in an emergency, Yang Yi couldn't care about gentleness. There were some bumps and noises which woke Shishi up. After putting Shishi on the bed, Yang Yi wanted to put a thick windbreaker on Murphy to keep her warm. Murphy slowly stood up from the bed, waved her hand and said, It's okay, I can wear it myself. Now that her stomach didn't hurt so much, Murphy didn't want Yang Yi to work too hard. Is it really okay? Here, stretch out your hand. Yang Yi grabbed the clothes and helped Murphy to open it. They didn't care about the volume of their conversation. Coupled with the bright light, Shishi was completely awakened and opened her eyes in a daze. Whoa, the little girl didn't have enough sleep, so she didn't know what was going on. She only felt sad and started to cry. Seeing that Murphy was standing steadily, Yang Yi turned his head and carried his daughter. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he coaxed. I'm sorry, Shishi, Dad woke you up. Oh, the little girl felt even more wronged. It was as if sleep was her most cherished treasure, but her father had cruelly snatched it away. She buried her head in her father's chest, avoiding the dazzling light, and continued to sob. Actually, it's my fault. Murphy also blamed herself. Let's not talk about this first, let's go. Can you go downstairs? Yang Yi held Shishi in his left hand and carried the luggage bag on his back with his right hand. Then he went to support Murphy. I can walk by myself. Mo Fei refused to admit it. In fact, she was also a little nervous in her heart. Being held by Yang Yi without any explanation, Mo Fei felt warm in her heart as she had someone to rely on. Whether it was for support or for her heart. Downstairs, Yang Yi drove out his Humvee. The off-road vehicle, like a giant beast, was also the safest existence at this moment. Yang Yi first carried Shishi into the car, let her sit in the safety seat, and fastened the seatbelt. Being blown by the cold wind outside, the little girl's consciousness was actually somewhat awake. Although she still felt a little wronged, at this time, she also found that something was wrong. In this chaos, it seemed that they were fleeing for their lives. "Papa, where are we going?" the little girl muttered in a daze. "We're going to the hospital. Mom's stomach hurts." Yang kissed his daughter's forehead and said softly, "Sorry Shishi, Dad woke you up." The little girl's brain was still very sleepy, so she had to turn a corner to understand the meaning of her father's words. Murphy was also helped into the car by Yang. She sat next to Shishi, but the seat was adjusted by Yang so that Murphy could have a comfortable posture. "Mom, are you in pain?" Under the warm yellow light, Shishi's long eyelashes were still hanging with sparkling and translucent tears, but the little girl had already stopped crying. She even looked at her mother next to her, and asked with a nasal voice. Murphy was a little surprised, and then she was moved to tears. She leaned over, kissed Shishi's little face and said emotionally, "Thank you, Shishi. Mom's stomach doesn't hurt that much now." Yang sat in the front, looked at the rearview mirror while starting the car, and said, "Shishi, if you're sleepy, you can sleep in the car." In fact, she was still a little sleepy. After all, it was still 2 o'clock in the morning, but Shishi couldn't fall asleep in the noisy car. In the hospital, Murphy was undergoing further examination by the obstetrician and gynecologist. When she snuggled in her father's arms, the little girl yawned, but she still couldn't fall asleep. "Papa, is the baby about to be born?" The little girl's voice was heavy, and she mumbled sleepily. "It shouldn't be. Just now, the doctor did a preliminary examination and said that it shouldn't be a baby, but just a stomachache. He wants to see what's the reason." Yang gently stroked his daughter's soft and smooth hair and said, The little girl seemed to be unable to bear it. She closed her eyes, and only a soft nasal voice was left. Looking at his daughter's soft nose, Yang gently coaxed her. "Go to sleep. Don't worry about your mom. I'm taking care of her. Good girl, go to sleep." In her father's warm and safe arms, Shishi fell asleep. After a long time, some hurried footsteps came from the corridor of the hospital. Yang Huan, Ding Xiang, and Guizi appeared in front of Yang. Yang Huan and Ding Xiang were now living above the coffee shop, and the house they had rented for a year was returned to Guizi. After all, he had started to take some small roles, and it was inconvenient for him to live in the dormitory. Now Guizi drove the two of them over. Seeing Yang, who was still in pajama pants, Yang Huan asked nervously, "Brother, how is sister-in-law?" Guizi and Ding Xiang also had concerned looks on their faces. Seeing the three of them, Yang patted his head in annoyance and said apologetically, "Sai, look at me. I forgot to tell you. Sorry for making you come here." It turned out that Yang was worried that he couldn't take care of the two of them by himself, so he called his sister in the car. But after confirming that everything was fine, Yang was so focused on coaxing Shishi to sleep that he forgot to tell Yang Huan and the others the news. It was a false alarm. Murphy is fine. The doctor checked and said that it was normal uterine contractions. But for safety's sake, we still need to do a full checkup tomorrow. But it shouldn't be a big problem, Yang said to Yang Huan and the others. "What about Shishi and sister-in-law?" Yang Huan asked with concern. "I asked for a ward for them to sleep in," Yang explained. "It's late at night. It's too troublesome for them to come here tomorrow. Besides, Shishi has to go to kindergarten tomorrow. They should rest well." No matter what, it was good that they were fine. Since they were fine, Yang asked Guizi to send the two girls back. He could take care of them by himself. When sending them to the car, Yang didn't forget to tell Guizi to take care of the two girls. "Drive slowly. It's hard to see clearly at night. Then send them home. You should go home and sleep too." Well, the last sentence was quite important. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.